Hello, 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 folks. How are we doing this fine weekend? I hope y'all are doing well. We're going to get started here in about a minute and 30 seconds. I hope everyone is staying cool and hydrated this weekend. I know I am. If you can, do let me know, whether my audio sounds good. Just doing a quick audio check here. Hi, folks. Thanks for coming by today. We have a fun project today. It's a continuation of last week's, and I am looking forward to it. If you didn't tune in last week, don't you worry. I've got starter code for you. Hey, Chris, how's it going? As you can see there, I've posted in chat for you already. We've got starter code. You can do exclamation point project if you want to see the code we'll be working on today. Hey, Copper Lily, good to see ya. Yeah, nice to see you again. I hope you're having a good week. All right, it's the final countdown. Okie dokie. The timer has counted down, so let's go ahead and get started. Jump right into it today. Welcome, welcome, everybody. I hope y'all are having a good day. Uh, I'm having a good day. Today's stream, we are going to be doing a continuation of last week's. However, if you did not tune in last week, that is perfectly okay. Um, I'm giving you starter code. You'll have everything you need to get started and be up to date with us right from the jump here today. So, what we are doing today is we are adding authentication to our CatBook or Facebook for Cats that we built last week. So, basically, the most important part of social media is that you should be able to have an account. You should be able to log in. You should be able to, you know, see your own stuff, see other people's stuff, and make changes, do CRUD operations, but only on the stuff that you have posted, right? Imagine if you could go onto Twitter and you could edit other people's tweets, right? Like that's not okay. So we're gonna modify our CatBook app to only allow you to do those CRUD operations on your own. I don't know what we want to call them. Purrs, I don't know, meows, whatever, what are your own cards, right? The things that you have posted, and you should be able to touch other people's stuff. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're also going to be making the nav bar react to whether or not you're logged in, and I'll demonstrate what I mean by that here in just a minute. Yeah, and so we're going to be implementing a lot of cool features today. If you've never done authentication before, I'm going to show you basically the easy way to do it. There's a wonderful package out there that you can use that makes authentication really easy to implement, also really easy to make secure, right? And so I'm gonna show you how to implement that and some of the just very basic version of authentication that you can use.
Bootstrap 252.
Oh, Bootstrap, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. Welcome to the stream. Copper Lily says, been catching up on your series on the new React docs. Good stuff. Oh, I'm glad you like that. I had a lot of fun doing that series. I have a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun with React in general, honestly. We didn't use React to build this particular project, but just React as a whole has been a really fun thing for me to get more familiar with. And I see, I understand a lot of the advantages of React now, and I really enjoy using it. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy using, basic HTML, CSS, EJS, that kind of thing as well. Just like we always say, it's about the right tool for the job, right? You go into your project, you find the right tool, and you implement that tool. And so it's good to be familiar with a lot of things so you can pick the right one. Okay, so what does authentication do for us here? So previously in the CatBook app, if you remember the previous version, how it used to work was you would just go to the homepage, you would see all the cards, and there would be an edit and delete button on each one. Actually, I'm going to reset this here. All right, so it would look sort of like this, except every single card would have an edit and delete button. And so you could just go in and you could make changes to any of the posted cards, right? You could edit and delete, do whatever to any of them. You could just straight up immediately start uploading a card right from the homepage. And we know that that's not really how social media works, right? How social media works is you create an account and then you can do all that stuff. And everything is tagged to you as the user. So now the way it works is you have to first log in or register before you can go and upload a new card. Or if you want to make changes to things that you have posted, let's say I'm going to say I'm test two. I'm going to say I'm this user. You know, I've got a broken image here. I'd really like to get rid of this card, but I can't because I'm not logged in. So I'm going to go over here to the login button and I'm going to type in my username and password. I'm going to submit. And now, yeah, and Google is freaking out because it hates these passwords, because it's like, oh my god, your password is too simple, you're gonna get hacked. It's like, it's okay, Google, just chill out. You know, we're in a local host environment here. It's okay. Yeah, so Google doesn't like that. But anyway, now that I'm logged in, we can see that first off, I'm logged in as test user two, right? And actually, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit for you. I'm logged in as test user two, and now I can edit and delete this card. So I'd really like to delete it because the image is broken. So I'm going to delete it just like that. But I still can't touch anything that was posted by test user one. So I can go in and upload something new. We'll do test, I don't know, 4. And I'll choose an image. I like that one. We'll submit, and there we go. So it's tagged to me as test user two. I can edit, I can delete all those wonderful things. Okay. And now also too, if I were to click log out, we can see we'll see a few things happen here, right? These controls will go away. This text will go away, and the menu buttons will change. So watch all three of those things if you can. And I'm going to log out. There we go. So text has gone away, buttons up here have changed, and I can no longer do anything to mess with any of these items. So also, if I were to register, I could go here and I could say test, let's say test 8. I can set a username and password, I can submit, and once again, Google freaks out. And now I'm logged in, but I still can't edit any of these items, right? Because I didn't post any of them. However, I could upload something new if I wanted. I now have access to all of those privileges of any logged in user. So what exactly is happening here? Well, what we're doing is we're actually storing, just like we were storing cats in our database, like this. We're also storing users. So what do you notice about the users that we're storing in this database? You know, when I registered, I chose a username and I chose a password, right? So, but what do you notice about the way that this information is being stored? What do you notice about these entries? Yeah, exactly, Copper Lily. They're encrypted, right? I can't see the password. What I do see are these values for salt and hash, which sounds kind of delicious, right? I think breakfast, I think hash browns, but really these are ways of encrypting the plain text password and making it so even though it's stored in a private password protected database, even though it's stored behind that locked door of a private database, it I still, even I, as the database administrator, I can't read that password. And that's really important. We can see the username, obviously, but and if we really wanted to, we could encrypt the username, but the password by far is the most important thing. Um, and so, you hear about like all these, I don't know, breaches all the time. I know that several of my passwords, I've gotten notifications from Google, oh, your password from 2012 has been discovered in a password leak. It was in a plain text notepad file or an Excel spreadsheet somewhere, right? And I feel like if someone like if us plebs can build an app that can encrypt passwords, like why can't these big corporations, right? And I'm going to show you just how easy that is to do those kind of things, and to make passwords, to store passwords safely in a database. And if I hover over this, we can see just how long that oh, it's not showing up, there we go. We can see just how long that hash is for a very simple, I'll tell you, it's a very simple password that I used for this particular account for all of these. And so it's just been scrambled beyond belief. And the nice thing is that the tool that we're using, Passport, not only does the scrambling, it also does the unscrambling. So you don't got to worry about it. It just handles everything. So that's what I really like about it. And now let's just take a quick look here at our CATS documents inside of our database. So if you remember from last time, we have, oh, no worries, Chris Crenshaw. It's good to see you. Thanks for stopping in. Enjoy your food. Salted hash. I know, right, Copper Lily? It makes me hungry every time I see that. Exactly. So we still have all the same sort of attributes that we had last time, but now we also have an owner property, right? We have this owner property. And what do you notice about the owner, right? What do you notice about the owner? What is this? What is this? Looks different than everything else in the list. What do you notice about owner? What do you think this is? Any guesses? I'm going to hydrate real quick. Function call. Good guess. Ah, Raz Wonders. Yeah, you got it. It's a relationship. So what this is doing is, if you notice, it looks kind of similar to the ID for for the parent document, right? So this is like an object ID here. It's a unique identifier that MongoDB uses. Um, and so what this is doing, yeah, is exactly Arduku. It's linking this cat to a particular entry in our users list. And so this is creating a relationship between those two things. So if we were to look at our list of users, we would see one that's F89C. Let's see, I think, which one is that? Yeah, right here. It's the first one. So that cat belongs to user test one. Now you might say, okay, why wouldn't it just, why wouldn't we just have something readable here, like username? Well, the thing about these object ID values is that they are truly unique. You never want to have a conflict between, a cat potentially belonging to two people with the same username, right? Even though we're not going to necessarily let people submit the same username, you don't even want to chance it. You don't want to have that possibility. So we always want to have a truly one-to-one relationship between a person and the post that they made, right? You never want there to be any confusion, especially when it comes to social media. You never want something to be attributed to the wrong person. And so that's what this is doing. It's linking to a specific object ID, which is truly unique and is never going to be duplicated inside of our users collection. Okay? Does that make sense what we're doing here? And fortunately, this relationship is fairly easy to execute. This is not any kind of voodoo or anything like that. And we should be able to implement it fairly easily. Okay, I think, last thing I want to show you is, so authentication, right? Seems like it might be kind of complicated. We're hashing, we're salting, we're cooking up passwords, we're causing, users to be attached to things, and user IDs are being thrown around everywhere. So how do we do that? Well, turns out Noon says NoSQL in relationships. What? Yeah, right. NoSQL is primarily known for NoSQL is primarily known for not having relationships, right? That's one of the primary I don't know, defining factors of things like MongoDB, is that each document by default is separate from all other documents. I could configure each of these individual documents completely differently, and MongoDB would not care, right? And however, in cases like this, we have two separate types of thing, right? We have cats and we have users, and we want to pair the two together and associate one with the other. And so we do have to force relationship here. I mean, MongoDB allows us to do that, but it is kind of interesting to think about how we are actually, replicating some of the functionality of a relational database within a NoSQL database. And we're going to kind of, especially, when we're using things like Mongoose and that kind of thing, a lot of what we do with MongoDB as you build more like advanced applications seems to kind of try to replicate the behavior of relational databases without being a relational database. I speak from that perspective as a SQL developer, as a relational database developer, that, MongoDB, as you grow it and make it more complex, you keep inching closer back to the way that relational databases work, but that's just me. Hey, Brainlin, what's up? Can you explain ORM models? Um, Not very well. Um, so are you talking about let's okay, quick Google here. So just talking about are you asking about like modeling in general? Oh, I see. So like converting between the two? Yeah. Um, Not very well, actually. I am primarily a relational database developer. I use NoSQL databases as like, for hobby developing. But I've not really done much converting between the two. So like moving data between one and the other. If somebody else is more familiar with that, feel free to chime in. I can't say that I can speak to it very well. And Bevran says, from what I've seen, the closer you try to push NoSQL to relational, the worse the performance gets. Uh, yeah. So then that begs the question: why not just use relational in the first place? But hey, I do like MongoDB. I do like MongoDB because it is so easy to spin up. You can just I can whip out a web app with MongoDB and Mongoose in like less than an hour. And whereas there's more setup involved with a SQL database and all that sort of thing, so it is quick. Oh, okay. So yeah, I'm catching up the chat here. Hey everybody, welcome. Um, Spain says, I was wondering why ID is not an integer. So are you talking about this value right here? Yeah, so this value right here is auto-generated by MongoDB. So if you're thinking about ID in terms of like a counter, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, um, you're gonna get into trouble at scale, right? If you've got a bunch of users trying to use your app and you have an ID is just a plain old integer, you're gonna run into things like two things being submitted at the same time, and so then they get assigned the same integer value. You're gonna get things like a bajillion users hitting it at once, and you're going to get an overflow. And so, what MongoDB does to mitigate that is it just assigns a truly unique value to each document. And so, that's actually much better than just trying to do a counter. Rainmaker says, is it Mongoose and ORM? Prisma or Mongoose, they are ORM. Yeah, okay. So, good point. Yeah, so we are using Mongoose in this particular app today. And it assigns a structure, it assigns a schema to MongoDB. So it forces a little bit of that structure that MongoDB does not have by default. And but within an app like this, where you're performing the same actions over and over and over again, and you expect consistency, you need structure, right? That's imagine if you had a social media app, with thousands of posts, and every single post looked different inside of the database. Your app wouldn't be able to pull that information down and display it in a meaningful way. It needs to have some kind of enforced structure, that where you've got required fields and things are coming in the right order with the same names, so your app knows how to interpret it. And honestly, using MongoDB like for an app like this without Mongoose, I just don't feel like it would work. Yes, MySQL is relational. It has a schema, correct. Yep. Um, any flavor of SQL, so whether it's Postgres, MySQL, Oracle, anything like that, yeah, it's going to be relational. It's going to be rigid. It's going to be highly structured, um, and it's just different strokes, right? Yes, exactly. And with MySQL, you can't put data into it without defining a table in advance. Yep. Whereas with MongoDB, you don't have to, right? You can start putting information into a MongoDB collection immediately. Just dump it in there. It doesn't care. Just documents can look like whatever you want. It's kind of like JavaScript. It's just like, hey, man, I'll take whatever you want to give me. It's all good. And you just dump it in there. Oh, and okay. So as Chris says, I think I understand the question better now. I was thinking that when you asked about ORM, you're talking about converting between like MongoDB and a relational database, and I really, porting data back and forth between the two, and I haven't done that. But yeah, we're using Mongoose. We're using these tools to help us communicate between our app and MongoDB. And there's ORMs for things like relational databases as well, which I really haven't used because I write at work and all that. I basically just write pure SQL. um, when I am talking to the database directly. I've used ETL tools to build mappings and that sort of thing. But yeah. And yes, Mongoose does make it simpler for us to interact with MongoDB. I've built stuff where without using Mongoose, and it makes it a lot harder to do basic things. I think we found last week that with Mongoose, if you wanted to perform an operation such as find, you would use the find method, right? Mongoose has a find method, and that just finds everything. So it's like a select star in SQL. Or if you wanted to find an item and update it, you would use the Mongoose method find one and update, or find by ID and update, and it's just that simple to do. So Mongoose does help simplify that a lot. Um, Brainland says the database class is tricky to pass. Absolutely. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on and get started. As you saw, my MooBot just posted in chat there the starter code for today. So if you have your code from last week, you're welcome to use it. If you don't, you can use the starter code on the GitHub there. So I'll go ahead and click on that. So this starter code is here. It's called CatBook. Um, just visit that link and you can fork and clone it down or however you want to do it. This is what we're starting with. It's basically where we ended last week, except it has styling. I wanted it to have some styling, and so it's fully styled with Bootstrap. Um, and this is what we're going to be building our authentication off of. Oh, interesting. You had to type in the terminal? That's weird. Hmm. Um, oh, and Spain says, do you also make ERDs at work? Are you talking about entity relationship diagrams? Um, I don't build those personally. We have an architect on our team who builds out the diagrams and like the structural relationships between the things, and then we follow those diagrams. So it's better to have in our case, it's better for us to have a singular architect who thinks about those relationships in the big picture sense, and then we develop off of that to make that vision come alive rather than everybody doing it individually. Actually, we have two architects. Yeah, it's neat. I'm glad I don't have to do it. I'm just like, oh yeah, that's the blueprint. Cool, I'll follow that. Oh, I don't use Mongo at work though. I use Oracle. I use Oracle PL SQL. Okay, so this is our starter code here. Let's clone it down, get it ready. I'm just kind of chattering away here a little bit to give you all a chance to do that. Get it set up, get it spun up, and down here you're going to have to do an npm install to install all the packages. You're going to need to add a .env file with your MongoDB connection string, and then the run command is npm run dev. So those are the three things you're going to have to do in order to get this working in a basic sense, and then we're going to start adding features to it. Bevran says, yeah, MongoDB does. You're correct. MongoDB has all that functionality at the basic level without using Mongoose. It's just much more intuitive to use Mongoose. Now, if you're interacting with MongoDB at scale and doing a bunch of, a bajillion calls, then yeah, I mean, you might encounter speed issues by having that extra middle layer of obfuscation with Mongoose. Um, and it says when MongoDB changed their callback API function, my code broke. Yeah, that's the thing. MongoDB, they change the way these basic things work sometimes, and then you're like, well, I'm screwed. Everything's broken. Yep. Okay. I'm going to assume everybody's working on getting this clone down, or you have it from last week. Let me go ahead and rearrange my windows here a little bit. Move this over here. All right. So this is the version straight from GitHub. And oh, and I was sorry, I got distracted. The other thing I was going to show you guys is the tool that we're going to be using for authentication today. So we're going to be using something called Passport. You may have heard of Passport. Basically, Passport is a wonderful all-in-one package tool that's going to allow you to quickly and easily implement any kind of authentication that you want. So, sometimes you might go to a website and they let you log in with Google, right? One click login with your Google account. Or maybe it says log in with Twitter, log in with Facebook, log in with Discord, log in with GitHub. All those little one click buttons where you can just link an existing account um, to your login with this particular app. That's the kind of thing that Passport can do for you. Now, we're not going to get that crazy today. We're going to just be implementing local authentication, very simple, basic implementation. But I just want to kind of show you everything that Passport can do. And this is passportjs.org. Go here to their homepage. And you can just click view all strategies, and you can see these are all the types of things that you can do. We've got Facebook, we've got Google, we've got Twitter, we've got Google again, Azure, GitHub, Microsoft, Apple, GitLab, Bitbucket, Okta, LinkedIn, Google One, really any type of login that you want to do, Slack, Discord, Steam, Atlassian, any kind of login that you want to do, you can use. And if you click on these things, for example, let's just look at the uh, Google OAuth here real quick. Actually, wait, is it? I think we want Google OAuth 2.0. That's the newer one. And it tells you exactly how to install it. It tells you exactly what to put into your app. That's really small. Why is it so small? It tells you exactly what to put into your app, how to handle requests. It gives you examples of an Express app. And so it's really thorough, wonderful documentation for any kind of login that you want to do. Yeah, and so essentially it's so DOO asks, so that's login with XAPI. So it's basically login with you're communicating with Google, right? Um, and so in this case, you would get a client ID and a client secret from Google, and you would plug that into this Passport code, and then Google would understand the request that it's getting from Passport, and it would say, oh, yep, this user exists, they're valid, go ahead and log them in, and then Passport says, cool, thanks, Google, and then it logs the person in. And so Passport handles all that heavy lifting for you, communicating with Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever validation you want to use. I don't know why you would want to use like LinkedIn get login, but anyway, um, most of the time you'll see something like Google OAuth, and so if you want to put that in, you can just get this package straight from Passport. We're not going to be doing that today. We're going to be doing local authentication, meaning that we are going to be handling we're going to be storing the username and hash passwords in our database ourselves. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't swap this out for Google OAuth if you wanted. Yeah, it is neat. Michael PC Gamer says Minecraft, Steam. Yes, exactly. There's literally there's anything you want to use, you can use. It kind of goes in order of like popularity, I think. DocuSign, Amazon. I mean, honestly, you could even do two-factor authentication if you wanted to, send a request two-factor, authentication thing, you could set that up as well. So Spotify, anything that you want. And so that's what we're going to be using today. Okay. Yeah. Auth 0, whatever you want to do. There's a bunch of Auth 0 and Google OAuth and all that sort of thing. Whatever you want to do, you can do it. Twitch, I mean, yeah. So it's really good. I really like it. Yeah. All right. Any questions before we get started and actually start writing some code here? Michael PC Gamer says, I'm afraid to ask my next question. Go ahead and ask. It's okay. You're allowed. All right. So I'm going to open up a new terminal here. Make it a little bigger. So in order to use Passport, we are going to have to install it. And we're going to install a couple different things here. Let me get pulled up over on my other screen. Michael PC says, are the only available options PG? Assuming you're asking about particular login types to certain sites. Is that right? You can search packages. So if there's a particular one you're looking for a particular authentication type, you can search for it. That'll be your treasure hunt to do. And Chris says, how are the kittens doing this week? They're doing really well. Yeah. They're doing good. They're cute. They're little chicken nuggets. Yeah, I hope we don't go past 6 o'clock today, or past another 2.5 hours, just because I do want to feed them at 6. But yeah, they're doing really good. All right, let's install a couple things. Obviously, we're going to need to install. Now, don't forget to install the base packages first. So when you first fork this down, make sure that you do an npm install to get the existing packages, and then we're going to install some additional packages on top of that, okay? Michael PC says, what's the link? Moobot just posted it in chat there for you. It's going to spam it every 5 minutes or so. So you can just click on the starter code link there. So npm I passport. Oh, are you talking about the link to Passport? It's just passportjs.org. So we're going to install npm I passport, but we're also going to install the specific type of authentication that we're going to be doing today, which is local authentication. So we're going to do passport dash local, and one more, passport dash local dash mongoose. And what this is going to do is it's going to help us work with Mongoose to kind of automatically build out that user schema. So we aren't going to have to manually build that. Passport is going to help us partner with Mongoose to basically just auto-generate that user information and store it in a user collection, which is pretty nice. So passport dash local, passport dash local dash mongoose. And if you want to see, make sure you've got the right ones, you can go into the finished code repo and look at the package.json file there, and you'll see those 3 things installed. So I'm installing them here. There we go. All done. Now we can make use of these things that we have just installed. So we're going to need to add a few things to our server. If we're thinking about, actually, let's not do that right away. Let's think about our user experience first. So I'm going to switch back here. This is the base version of CatBook that we're working in right now. This is the running version. So if I am thinking about the user experience, people are going to land on the homepage first, right? And they're going to want to start interacting with the app. So what might I need to give them to start being able to interact meaningfully with the app? Thinking about GUI elements, perhaps. What am I going to need to give them? What types of things am I going to need to give the users? Just thinking in terms of structure here. What do we need to add to our app structure to, add the ability for our users to authenticate themselves? Input box. Okay, Arwen, what type of input box? What types of input boxes are we going to need? Yeah, as Drunk Uncle Grandma said, we're going to need a login form And the other thing, if they aren't yet a member, how are they going to become a member, right? Sign up and log in. Exactly. Those two things we're going to need. So if we're thinking in terms of app structure, we've got our home, we've got our upload, we've got our edit. We're going to need two additional views, right? One for register, one for login. So we're going to just whip up real quick. We're just going to whip up two new views here. I'm going to put them in my views folder. And another thing too is as we start adding these additional features, we're going to start to see reasons why um, we're using this MVC structure. Last week, you might have been a little bit like, well, we have all these folders, but we're only putting one thing in them, right? We have like folder and one file, folder and one file. Like, this is stupid. Why are we using MVC? Well, we're going to see this week, we're going to start adding additional files to these folders, and MVC is going to make a little bit more sense. So MVC is a great platform for building more complex apps and building on those apps easily and quickly. So that's why we did that. All right, so inside of views, I'm going to go ahead and just add a new file here. I can make this smaller. We don't need to see everything right now. I'm going to add a register.ejs and a login.ejs. So two separate options that people can click on. Michael PC says, "Oh, Twitch has 1440p. Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad it does. I know it used to only, like, my monitor is 1440p, but Twitch used to downscale it to 1080. So I'm glad it's giving you the option to upscale now to full resolution. That's good. Um, and Silva says password would be great if you want to pull up some info from an API. Let's say you authenticate with Netflix, and once you're in, you pull your recent watch movies. So as far as I know, Passport is really just for authentication purposes only. So you could potentially authenticate with Netflix, and Netflix would say, yes, this person is a valid user, but you would still need to talk to Netflix's API directly to like pull watch movies and that type of thing. Although I could be wrong. I mean, that could be a feature. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our login and register views, and these are going to be very simple. I'm actually just going to grab I'm going to grab the header from my from really any other view. So just grab the header from any other view, and we can just change the title to be something different. So we can just say, what is this? This is login. So I'll just change the title, and then we'll just add it. We can just add our body tags. So that way we have our bootstrap link, we have our style sheet link, and we don't have to, redo that stuff. Now, this is going to be very simple. Like I said, it's really just going to be a simple form with two options, one for username, one for password, or password, sorry. Michael PC says, do you have a different folder for client and server? So this is all a kind of an all-in-one app. We have our server right here, and then we just have our views, models. Everything is together. We could have, sometimes you can build your API in one project, and then your client side stuff in another project. We're doing a single app here because it's so small. All right, so inside of the body, going to be fairly simple. Like I said, let's go ahead and first grab our nav bar. If you recall, we have a partial here where we're storing our nav bar. And the nice thing about that is it's kind of like a React component. We can use it wherever we want, as many times as we want, and it's going to look the same each time. So rather than having to take all of this and put it at the top of each page, we can just import this nav bar partial. So I'm going to go to home, and I'm just going to grab this as well. We're just saying include partials nav bar, and I'm going to drop it. Oops, that's the wrong one. Sorry. I'm going to drop it at the top of my body tag here, and that'll just put it at the top of the page, that whole nav bar. Perfect. Oh, yes, I need my closing HTML tag too. Yeah. Luckily, I think it seems like Chrome is pretty forgiving if you forget that. But yes, there we go. Closing HTML tag. Thank you for that. Okay, now let's build out our form. And I'm going to get there in a second. So we're going to have a container at the top. So what that's just going to be is a div with a class of container. And once we do this once, we're going to be able to basically copy all of this and put it on our register page. Our login and register page are going to look pretty much identical, except for the labels, really. So we do this once, and we don't have to do it again. So div class container. And then inside of that div, we're going to have a form. And that action, does anybody remember what does action mean when we're talking about a form? When we say action, what is that? What is the action field for? We're going to have an action, we're going to have a method. That kind of this the autocomplete kind of gives it away here, but what is action doing? And you can also hover over it to see it for a hint. What is action doing? Yeah, and as Yarmo says, yes, exactly. It's whatever path we're submitting the form to. So what so our server is listening for all kind of actions to take place. Are we logging in? Are we going to a different page? Are we, I don't know, are we submitting a form? Are we clicking a button? Each one of those is going to have a different path to tell the server where to route that information to. And so this is essentially what action we want to happen on the server side. So our action that we want to happen when we are on the login page and we submit the login form, that action is going to be login. And then we're going to have a route on our server side, which is going to handle that and send it to the right controllers. And our method here is just going to be post. Remember, forms can only handle two methods. They can only handle get and post by default. So we're going to choose post here. Yeah, it's totally rat says, yep, get or post. That's the only thing, that's the only methods that forms can handle, just the way they're built. I don't know why. Now, for Bootstrap purposes, we're going to have a div in here, and it's going to have a class of form group. And what that's going to do is it's going to basically make a nice grouping of the label and the input box, and it's going to make it look nice. So that's all we're doing here, form group. And then inside of our form group, we're going to have a label, and we're going to have an input box. So those two things are going to be grouped together. Let's see, input box. Yep. Okay, perfect. And so we're going to have two of these. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. One of them is going to be for your username. One of them is going to be for password. So label is going to be for username. And the text in there is just going to say username. Perfect. Input type is going to be text. Class is just going to be form control. Once again, that's just for styling purposes. The ID is going to be username. And the name is also going to be username. Now, what these are going to do is they're going to help tell our server what information we're passing to them. It's going to literally attach a label to it and say, hey, this bundle of information from the form that's getting submitted, it contains values of username and password. And so our server is going to take those and do the appropriate things with them. All right. Now, the last thing I want to do here is I want to make sure that if somebody's trying to log in, they got to have a username and they got to have a password. They can't leave one of them blank or both of them blank. That's not going to work. Oh, thank you, Timo.
just followed.
Thank you for the follow. So what we can do here is we can add a required property. And this is really useful if you have a form and you want to do a little bit of front-end validation and force somebody to put a value in there. They got to have it. It's got to, all you need to do is just add the word required and it'll give them an error if they don't submit it. So that's super helpful. I think that's everything I need there. Now we can do the same thing down here for the second form. We're going to say password. Label for password. The text here is going to be password. And input type is going to be text. Now I'm just going to copy this information here. Once again, class is going to be form control. ID is going to be password. And the name is going to be password as well. And once again, it's going to be required. And I have an extra closing tag there. All right. Now, what's the last thing we need on our form? Hey, Dremoto, welcome to the stream. Good to see you. So we have our username, we have our password boxes. What's the last thing we're missing on this form? Yeah, exactly. It's a button, right? It's a button, and y'all know how to code a button. Little inside joke there. Can you format a button? Yeah. All right. What does the button type need to be? Yeah, and I think Copper Lily just answered it there. The button type needs to be. It's given us some options here. We can see we have some options, but our button type is going to be submit. Now, that's not just for show. That actually means something. When we're talking about forms, the submit button type causes the form to perform certain actions. So it causes it to do a couple things. It causes it to post to this particular path and sends it up to our server, and it reloads the page by default, clears the form, reloads the page. And so that's what the submit button type does. The other button types also have default actions as well, but submit is the most common one. So class is, we're just going to give it a little styling here. It's going to be button and then button primary. That's just going to make it blue and look decent. And then finally, we just add our button text here. Button text is submit. Oh, and I'm sorry, I made a mistake here. So our input type, you're right, exactly right, Arduku. That's correct. For our password input box here, we want it to hide the password, right? As you're typing in, you want it to just be little dots so that your little brother looking over your shoulder is not going to know your password, right? So that's exactly correct. We can change this type from text to password. Excellent catch there, Arduku. That's great. Now that we do this, when you type in the box, it's just going to show those little dots. I don't know about you. Sometimes I find that annoying when I'm typing in like a long password or whatever, and I have no idea if I've done it right. And then I'm like, it's just little dots. I have no idea. And then I get it wrong 3 times, and I go to reset it, and it's what I thought it was in the first place. But I think it's safer this way anyway. All right, that should do it. That's all we need to do for this particular view. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And the nice thing here is easy when your password is 12345. Hey, that's the password on my luggage. Yeah. Mattel says that dog looking over the cat's shoulder doesn't get their passwords. How did you get my password? Oh, I love Spaceballs. Oh, thank you for the follow, Arade. All right, now we can once again we can copy pretty much all of this for the register page. So I'm literally just going to do that. I'm going to grab all this and I'm going to go to my register.ejs and just paste it in. Now we can change the title to be register. And now we're also going to need to change these paths as well to make sure that this traffic gets routed correctly. So on register, we're just going to change this path from login to register. Oops. There we go. Register. Method is still going to be post, form group, username, text, form control, username. Yep, that's all fine. Once again, form group, password, form control, password. Yep, no need to change anything here. And then no need to change anything here. So really these two pages are going to be identical, except for now. Oh, and actually I forgot an H1 here. I need to add an H1 to show what the page title is. So just above the form title, we can just add an H1 and say register inside of our container, and that'll give it a nice title. And I want to do the same thing for login as well. So these two pages are functionally identical, except where the traffic is being routed, right? We're just sending it to a different place on the server, and it's going to be handled completely differently just because of this one little path right here. So real quick, I'm just going to go back to my login page, and I'm going to add an H1. Sorry if you hear my dog woofing a little bit. He's asleep, and he's having a dream right now, and he's woofing in his sleep, which is pretty cute. So I'm going to let it happen. Michael PC says, something I discovered recently is that you can change the type from password to text and back based on a button so users can show or hide the password. Absolutely. And you see that sometimes, I think for accessibility reasons, you see that on a lot of big websites. You can usually click on a little eyeball and it will flip, it'll toggle that visibility on and off. And that's absolutely something you can do. Yep. All because it really is just a style change, right? You can just change this type from one to the other, and that's not hard to do. So if that's a feature you want to implement, you absolutely can. Michael PC says, some shouldn't register allow you to confirm password. Absolutely. We're not going to do that because we're more focusing on like the authentication part, but it would be fairly easy to do. You could add just one more input box and compare the two values, right? You would just have them type in password, do a quick validation check to make sure that the two are identical, and if they're not, don't let them submit. Yeah, it'd be fair. You could just pop a little EJS in there to check the two values, or have a controller to do it. And yeah, but 100% that's something you can do. Adding a quick confirm. Mattel says your dog is dreaming of hacking the CatBook. Yeah, probably. All right, so we have our views now, which is going to be helpful for us because that means that we can set up our routing correctly. We know what paths we need to route, right? We know that we need to be able to handle a login path. We know that we need to be able to handle a register path, and those are going to work fine. Now, I think the next thing I want to do, we've got about 10 minutes before our break. And so I think a good thing for us to do next would be to think about, we have where the users are going to be putting in their username and password information on the front end. And I think what I want to do is figure out where that information is going to go on in our back end, in our database, inside of our model, right? Because we have a model for all the cat information, but what we don't have is a place for all that user information to go. Now, fortunately, like I said before, Passport makes this extremely easy. It's going to handle all that conversion for us. We just need to tell it where to put the stuff. So we already know where our cat data is being stored in our database, right? We have a model, and we're using Mongoose for this. We have a model which contains our collection information and our schema. Now, what schema is, we kind of talked about this before. Schema is the structure for how the data is going to be stored in the database. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a separate model inside of my models folder. And I'm just going to call it, I make sure I get the right name here. I'm just going to call it user model.js. Okay. Yeah, Michael VC there's saying, yeah, you can do type, show pass, text, or password, right? It's just going to be a ternary. It's one or the other. If you want to do that thing where you can toggle the visibility on or off, super simple to do. I love ternaries. They're great for that kind of thing. Absolutely. All right, so let's build out our model, and you're going to be amazed. You're going to be amazed how simple this is. You're going to love it. So what do we need to do first, though? If I want to build a model in this file, what's the first thing I need to do? What do I need to do first if I want to build out a schema? Yeah, we're going to need to start requiring some stuff, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do const mongoose, and we're going to require mongoose. And also, too, I want to show you just, we're not trying to get crazy here, but ooh, thank you for the follow. Jailson, thank you for the follow, Jailson. Jungle Grandma says I cheated and looked at cat model. Hey, that's valid, right? We want to build off of what we've already done. That's the goal.
Palante_Mark just followed.
Thank you for the follow, Palante. So Mongoose first. Now I'm going to build this schema just a slightly different way. Just I've seen it a couple times, and I just don't want you to get thrown by it. So we're going to just also do const schema, and we'll have that be mongoose.schema. Now, you'll notice that's not quite how we did cat model. We didn't bother with that. We just said new mongoose schema, but this is essentially going to do the same thing. We're just shortening it slightly to be stored in a variable. So no big deal. You don't have to do it that way if you don't want to. I'm just doing it for kicks. Now, what we're going to need next is the helping hand that we installed earlier, where Passport is going to help talk to Mongoose and say, "Hey, Mongoose, you know the user is trying to do something here with Passport with passwords and usernames, and Mongoose, let's talk. Let me help you build what you need to build and tell MongoDB what to store in the database." So we're going to say const, const Passport. I can't spell Passport local mongoose, and we're going to require Passport local mongoose. If you recall, we installed that earlier, Passport local mongoose. This is a special tool that works with Mongoose directly and helps to build out that stuff in the database so you don't have to. So back to user model here. Now it's going to let us use some specific methods that are going to help us build this much faster. Now I'm going to build out my schema, right? We build out our structure, how we want this user data to be stored. And you might be like, oh gosh, we have all these hashes and salts. Like what is that? What type is that? How do I enforce it? Make sure it's getting put in there correctly. Well, let me show you. Bear with me. We're going to call this user schema. That's going to be the schema we're going to use. All right. Now we say new schema. And we're done. Cool. That was hard, right? No, we're not quite done. I'm being facetious, but Mongoose local, Passport local Mongoose is going to handle all of this for us. So we're just going to we're going to send it through a plugin, and the plugin is going to build out the data for us. So the only other thing we need to do here is say user schema dot plugin Passport local Mongoose, and say, Passport, you do it. Just build the thing, build what you need to build, and that's going to build the schema for us. So easy peasy, lemon squeezy. That's all we need to do. Our schema's done for users. And how that's gonna look then is it's gonna store it however it needs to store it in the database with the relevant information. If we go back to the database here, just a quick refresher, it's gonna look like this. It's gonna store the username, salt value, hash value. Now, this is something you can customize. You can store the data in different ways, but by default, just using this plugin, it's going to store it like this. And then yes, and so you're you're reading my mind. My next question is going to be, what's the last thing I need to do in order for us to be able to use this model in the rest of our application, right? Y'all are reading my mind. Y'all are thinking ahead, and I really like that. So yes, the last thing we need to do, the thing that people often forget, which is why I usually ask the question, is module dot exports. Yeah, we still need to export it, even though Passport is building the schema for us. We still do need to export it. So I'm going to say mongoose dot model. Our model name is going to be users, and then we're telling our model which schema we're using, and we're using user schema. Michael says, I'm going to be looking at Mongo in a few days again. So exciting. That's awesome. Yeah. Yep. And so we do still need to export it. Now, just theoretically, if I wanted to change the name of the collection this is being stored in, I don't want to. In this case, it's fine. It's going to be called users. It's all good. I could add a third argument here and call it like user info or something like that. That would be that I could add a custom collection name, which is how it would be, where it would be stored in the database. But by default, it's just going to store it in a collection called users, which is perfectly fine for our purposes today. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. All right, so now we have the front end. We have, where people are inputting stuff. And then we have the back end where people are going to be storing the stuff. We have the data. We've created our little space in the database where this information is going to be stored. Um, and then the last thing I want you all to check before you before we take our break here is do also check in your .env file. Now I'm going to show this to you guys real quick just to illustrate how it should look. So be good. Make sure that you have your database URI and make sure that you have your username and password in the appropriate places and that you've specified a database name. Okay, so I'm going to be writing to a new database here. In this instance of the application, I'm going to be writing to a database called CatBook2. Just put it prior to the question mark, username and password there. And then I'm also specifying a port here because I have two versions of the app running, and so they conflict otherwise. But you don't have to specify a port if you don't want to. You can hard code it in the server. Okay, so that's the other thing you're going to need in order to make a successful connection to your database. Don't forget that. All right. Any questions before we take our break? So what we're going to do, feel free to ask. I'm going to keep talking, but ask your question if you need to. So now that we have where the users are entering information, the paths they're going to be using, and then where that information is going to live in the database, now we're going to make that connection between the two. We're going to set up our server to handle authentication requests. We're going to set up a router, which is going to route those requests. And then we're going to set up some controllers, which are going to do the actual logic to, check authentication, query the database and say, hey, is this user valid? Are they registering? If they're registering, we need to write them to the database. So our controllers are going to do all those CRUD operations. And it's all going to live inside of our existing structure here. 9fast says, how do we choose that we need Mongo? Why not Postgres, since it also supports JSON data? That is a very valid question, absolutely. And as a SQL developer, I'm pretty familiar with SQL and relational databases as well. Hey, Raul. But most of the folks here that are viewing my stream today are not. They are more familiar with JavaScript and objects and JSON data. And so we generally use MongoDB and Mongoose here on stream because it's a very familiar format. It uses objects, it uses JavaScript, it uses all those wonderful familiar tools and concepts and formats that viewers are familiar with. Now, is it always the best choice? It's all about the right tool for the job, right? But in our case, we're building a very small app here. So MongoDB and Mongoose is a perfectly valid choice, and it works great for what we're trying to do. So it's more of a familiarity thing in this case. And building out these Mongoose schemas, I like building out Mongoose schemas and using all these nifty Mongoose methods. It's fun to mess with it as well. So I don't mind it.
9fastfingers just followed.
Oh, thank you for the follow, 9fastfingers, and welcome to the stream. Good to have you here. And I also find that it's good to be familiar with both ways of doing things, right? I use SQL every day at work, and so I want to be familiar with other ways of doing things outside of work. Absolutely. Chris says, can I use the same database as I used last week? Mailer, thank you for the follow. Users collection in the same database. Potentially, one thing you might run into is if it's trying to retrieve user information to put on the card, and your existing entries in your collection, like your existing cat entries in your collection, don't have that username, you might get some errors. However, what you could do is stay in the same collection and just delete the existing entries. So that they don't, so you're not trying to pull down a non-existent username associated with it. And you could just use the same collection, delete the existing, use the same database and collection, delete the existing entries and, rebuild it. And that would be fine. Michael PC says, with modern algorithms and computational capacity, is SQL necessary? I would say absolutely yes. So a lot of the data that I work with at work for my job is highly relational. And they're doing a lot of analytics against it that are highly relational analytics. They want to see things, the primary analytics. I don't do those analytics directly. I provide the data for those analytics, but it's all about relationships. It's not about individual documents or anything like that. It's all of the data that I work with is heavily at scale, and the analytics are also done at scale, at large volume, on finding large volume relationships in these tables. And so it's all about aggregation. It's all about we're talking tables with 40 million rows for all a ton of data. And so yeah, I would say it's absolutely valid. It just depends on your use case. Phantom says, "Hey, what should I learn to get a job as a software dev? Um, what should I learn to get a job as a software dev?" Well, do exclamation point Leon in chat, or I can do it for you. Um, if you want to learn to get a job, how to get a job, there you go. Thank you, Chris. You fast fingers. If you want to learn how to get a job, and not just, it's not about the tech necessarily. You can learn a lot of different things. You could learn C++. You could learn COBOL. Heavy Carbs, thank you for the sub. Wow, my goodness. Thank you so much.
Heavy Carbs just subscribed.
Wow, thank you so
Time.
much. Thank you for the follow, Raul. So I mean, people get jobs in COBOL, right? People get jobs in C. People get jobs in, I don't know,
Bulk underscore Brady just
Go
joined.
and Rust and whatever. It's not necessarily about the tech. It's about how you market yourself. And so if you want to, learn both the skills and how to get the job, I would suggest 100 Devs. It's free. It's all free. We have a Discord, we have YouTube, we have Twitch, and there is no there's no paywall. Nothing's behind a paywall. It's all free. So I would check out the Discord, get a feel for it, check out the YouTube channel, and learn stuff, learn how to get a job. Fuel Snapple says, I do COBOL. Oh, that's awesome. I work with a couple of developers at my current job. They're SQL developers now, but they started out doing COBOL. They started, like, they've been developers for like 30 years or something, and they started out doing mainframe development with COBOL, which is pretty cool, I think. Yeah. Okay, I think let's go ahead and take a break. I'm loving the discussion so far, and I hope it continues. Feel free to keep talking over the break, but we do need to give folks a chance to stretch and hydrate and all those sorts of things. I need to go open that door that's behind me because I'm sweating my butt off. It's really hot in this room, so let's take 5 minutes. I'm gonna cool down a little bit, and then we'll come back and we will start building out our routes and we'll start building out our controllers for our application here. Phil Snobble says, yeah, Raul says, I'm learning data science. They told us SQL is a must. I agree. I started out in data analytics, using SQL really heavily there. It's a great multi-purpose language for if you're talking to databases. Great for analytics and data science. Yeah, SQL's good to know. Yep. All right, 5 minutes. Yeah, my graphics card is cooking me alive right now. So 5 minutes, we'll come back and we will set up our routes and our controllers, and we'll really see we'll really get into the guts of Passport and set up the brain of how Passport is going to just effortlessly handle all these authentication requests and give our app everything it needs to know. All right. Okay, folks, don't worry. You still got about a minute 30 in the break. I just wanted to chime in on this good SQL discussion going on here. Yes, definitely take your break. Um, Michael PC says, I did learn SQL for a class. I got as far as 2 nested queries before things got too much for me. Yeah, and as Fuel Snobble says, in prod code, I seldomly write too much nesting anyway. It makes it hard to follow. Absolutely, Fuel. I agree. I do the same thing. Unless I'm doing like some investigation where I'm trying to figure out where something has gone wrong, then I'll do some nesting and a bajillion joins trying to link things together. But in general, in prod code, yeah, I don't do heavy nesting. No more than two, right? Like anything more and you're just begging for mistakes and confusion and inefficient queries. And so really you just figure out different ways to get the data that don't require that much nesting. And so yeah, I don't know that I've ever had to go under 2 levels, just as Fuel Snovel said, in prod. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, with SQL, I mean, in order to actually start using it, you don't have to know a ton. That's why it's so good for analytics, because people can just be casual users of SQL and immediately jump in and start using it for analytics. As Fuel Snobble said, yeah, it's great for casual users. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the timer. So come on back. Oh, maybe I'll stop it. Maybe. It's also very iterative, which is great for learning, I find. So are you talking about like uh, it's also like you can add things to it very easily? I just want to make sure I understand. Mikey said, hey, Mayan, I'm just now getting into APIs. Ooh, fantastic. Do you have any information on promises and asynchronous programming? Yes, I do. I have a stream on that. I have a full stream talking about promises. We do a lot of fun with APIs, hitting APIs on various streams as well. So, Mikey, if you want to go to my YouTube channel, do !YouTube in chat if you need a link. And in my YouTube channel, you can search. I believe I have a stream called Promises, and then I have a ton of API projects as well. We've got the Star Trek API, we've got the Doggo generator, and so you can look at any of those where we talk about async await promises and sort of put those into practice. Yeah. Uh, And Fuel Snobble says, I write a query and I test it in the SQL tool and see the result. Yeah, exactly. That's the nice thing about SQL is you can run it directly in whatever tool you're using. You don't need to compile an application around it. You can just run the query, test it, and change it and run it fast, fast, fast. That's a lot of what I do at work is I do those types of little quick and dirty queries and just run them over and over again with small tweaks each time. Yep. And yes, and the ability to roll back changes is great as well. Absolutely. Don't commit until you're ready. I'm afraid of commitment, so that's really great for me. All right. Now, as I said before, let's go ahead and start building out our structure in terms of our what we need to do for our server in order so our server understands that we're going to be doing some authentication, and then building out our routes and our controllers. So let's pop over to our server.js. And we've got a lot of stuff in here already, but we're going to be adding a few more things. So basically, first thing we need to do is tell our server that we are going to be using Passport. And so that's fairly easy. We're just going to require it. So we can just say const passport, and then we're going to require passport. And I do realize I am going kind of fast today. And so if I'm going too fast, and if at any point you're falling behind or you're not understanding what's going on, do please ask. I'm aware I'm going a bit fast. I'm just trying to. Really want to get through the information in 3 hours today, but that doesn't mean you're not allowed to ask questions. Okay, so feel free to ask. Feel free to tell me to pause for a second or restate what I just said again. And explain it a different way. I'm happy to do that. So don't feel like you can't ask questions. Next thing we're going to do is, so this is just basically saying, hey, we're going to be using Passport. Our next require statement is going to say what strategy we're going to be using. So we talked about before how Passport has like 500 different ways that you can do authentication. You can do it with Google, LinkedIn, GitHub, Twitch, Twitter, any site you can think of. You can basically use Passport to link to their authentication service. We're not going to be doing that. We're going to be using and those are called strategies. All those different ways of doing it, that's called a strategy. And so the strategy we're going to be using is local. And so when we say local, what we mean is we're not reaching out to any outside entities for authentication. We're not going anywhere else. We're not hitting Google's API or whatever. We are just keeping things in-house. We're storing the data in our own database. And so we're just going to say local strategy. Oops, sorry. Const local strat. I cannot spell, I swear. Const local strategy. And we're going to require Passport local. And again, that tells Passport, hey, we're going to be doing local authentication, so it's going to configure it how it needs to be configured. That's going to be require passport-local.strategy. Okay? Oopsie. Ooh, what did I do? Oh, there we go. And then the final thing we're going to need is we are going to need to bring in our user model, because we're going to be having some middleware action happening, which is going to be touching our user model. So that model that we just built for our database, we can just bring it in here, require models, oops, models, and then user model. We can bring that in. Models, user model. And then we have our port here already. And I'm actually using port 4000, so I'm going to change that. We still have our database connection, just like we did before. Now we're going to add some additional middleware. Fuel Snobble says, fast and furious? No, never furious. Sometimes fast. Fast and fabulous, maybe. Okay. Express static public. We still have our view engine. Now we're going to add some middleware that's very specific to Passport. And actually, I think we may need to install one more dependency as well. Let me double check here. Yeah, we're gonna need to install one more dependency. Sorry about that. I missed one. We're gonna need to install something called Express Session. So just do a quick npm install. It's just gonna be called Express Session, just like that. npm I express session. And once again, you can see this in the finished code. I just missed it this time around. So I just put that in chat there for you. Oops. I didn't mean to hit the Leon command either, but npm I express session, not the Leon part, just npm I express session. Sorry. So install that, and the finished version has it too. So hit enter, and I'll tell you what this is doing here in a second. All right, we've installed that. Now we can use it. Family, whatever. I read that as fast and furious. Sure. All right, now we're going to add a piece of middleware here, and we're going to make use of that express session. So we're going to say app.use, and that app.use keyword is when we're talking about middleware and making use of middleware. You'll always see that use keyword. Now, does anybody remember when I say middleware? What do I mean? What does middleware do? What is it for? While I'm typing this out. So app.use session. What do we mean when we say middleware? Initialized. I don't know if I spelled that right. Okay. All right, so this session, what do we mean when we say session? Well, what that means is when you log in to a website, um, let's say I log into Twitter and I'm doom scrolling, so I'm constantly refreshing the page, trying to see what the new news is on, I don't know, global warming or Elon Musk or whatever I'm obsessing over. Um, I'm constantly reloading the page, right? Twitter doesn't log me out every single time I reload the page. That would suck. What it does is it remembers that I've already logged in, and so it holds my session and says, "Oh, this user is already logged in. They don't need to log in again." Or if I like navigate to if I'm on a website and I'm logged in and I navigate to a different page, it doesn't log me out and make me log in on every single page. That would be terrible. And so that's a session. That's a user session, and that session stays valid for a certain amount of time until they log out or it expires. And so we can use Express session to basically have Express say, "Yeah, this user is already logged in. um, you don't need to make them log in again." And Drunk Uncle Grandma answered my question that I asked earlier in when I asked what is middleware. Yeah, and it's essentially, yeah, it's stuff that acts as the go-between for other stuff. And so the way our app works is all about messages being passed back and forth, right? We're passing messages from the user, from our front end, from our client, up to our server. We're passing messages from our server through our routers to our controllers, to the database, back to the controllers through the route, um, you know, back to our client side. And so messages are flowing back and forth all the time. And so what middleware does is it intercepts those messages at certain points and it modifies what's being transmitted. It might change the format. It might change something from a string to an object or an object to a string. It might parse the data and make it readable by our server. It might add some information. We're going to see that. It's going to, we're going to add some. We're going to be validating our sessions, in our middleware. We're going to be adding some user information into those messages that are going back and forth. And so it's taking it's intercepting those messages, making them readable, adding information, changing the format of that information, and then sending that message back on its way to complete its journey. So it never stops the information. It's just a pass through. It's like a filter or a prism. It doesn't stop the information. It just changes it in some way. Yeah. And Renate says, so when you use sessions, you don't have to store anything on the user's computer like cookies. That's a great question, actually. I'm not 100% sure on that. The relationship between like sessions and cookies is something that I probably should have looked into a little bit more. I used to know it and I don't remember. If anybody wants to Google that and drop the knowledge in chat, I would be grateful to you. Um, I just know that at the very minimum, if you don't want people to log in on every single page, you need a session. But I think for additional validation, if you want to make sure that the same user is accessing that, that session every single time, you can use a cookie for that. But I may just be talking nonsense, so please do validate what I'm saying. Somebody. Late Key, welcome to the stream. Yeah, we're not doing any cookie storage here. Bare minimum. We're just doing bare minimum authentication. But yeah, I have used cookies before. So after our session, we basically just need to turn Passport on. So that's very easy to do. We just say app.use passport.initialize. So that reminds me of like Transformers or something. Passport initialize. And all we're doing is we're just turning it on. And same for session. We're just saying, hey, app.use, right? Passport.session. There we go. So those two things just basically tell our server, hey, we're using these things. Passport, hey, we're using these things. And so we can use them. Next, we have a little bit more to do. We need to set up our, let's see, Renee says, I've used JSON web tokens for logins before, and then I need to store the token in local storage. Yeah, and we have done that as well. I have done that in the past. Yeah, to store it locally, because I think the cookie is going to get transmitted, from the user's local machine. It's going to get transmitted and then authenticated against the cookie that is being stored in the database, I think is what I've done in the past. Yeah. Okay, so next up, we also now need to initialize. We required our strategy previously, right? This is the type of authentication that we're going to be doing. We're not hitting any outside APIs. We're just doing everything locally. So now we set that up in our middleware. Passport dot use. And I will say, I mean, there's a lot that goes into authentication, right? And I'm no expert at it by any means. I think it's fun to mess with. I think it's kind of scary to think about. And so, you know, the best way to learn more about it, I think, is by implementing it. And by, as you do it, these kind of questions come up and you're like, oh yeah, I wonder what that's for. I wonder how I can make it better. I wonder how I can make my authentication safer. And if this was a production application, I would absolutely be doing a lot more research into this. And yeah, and making it as safe as humanly possible. Unlike a lot of major corporations, apparently, who are storing their passwords in plain text, which is just bizarre to me. Authenticate. And so what we're doing here is we're essentially just saying, hey, Passport, we're going to call upon that user model to do authentication using the local strategy. So that's basically telling our it's telling Passport what to tell Mongoose to store in that user schema. So just local strategy authentication, which is going to store the username, and the hashed and salted password. So once again, this is calling on our user model, which we have right here, and it's basically saying, hey, this is the stuff we're going to be storing in our database. And then next thing we're going to do is the fancy stuff that is going to be making our password safe for storage. And to do that, we're going to do two things. We're going to serialize the user, and we're going to deserialize the user. And I'll tell you what these are in just a second. All right. So serialize user, what that's going to do is once again call on our user model and serialize it. Now you might be like, wait, what's serialize? I'll tell you in just a sec. And then user model again and deserialize. This is basically that scrambling that's happening. So when we save a new password into the database, we want to make sure it's salted and hashed and scrambled and completely unreadable to the human eye. However, when somebody's attempting to log in, they're going to be typing a plain text password. And so we need to be able to validate that completely scrambled version against whatever the user has typed in. And so essentially this is the scrambler and the unscrambler. So we scramble the eggs, and then we also need to be able to unscramble them and do that validation. And Late Key says, from Passport website, to solve the challenge, web applications make use of sessions, correct? Yep. Which allows state to be maintained between the application server and the user's browser. Yeah, that's what we were talking about when I said, you don't have to log in every single time you navigate to a new page on a website, right? It saves that information, it remembers it. A session is established by setting an HTTP cookie in the browser, which the browser then transmits to the server on every request. The server uses the value of the cookie to retrieve information it needs across multiple requests. In effect, this creates a stateful protocol on top of HTTP. Yeah, okay, so I guess maybe that's being handled via this. Because previously I've had to do cookies, storing cookies in my own database, but yeah, maybe that's happening automatically here. That's cool. Chris Rensaw says, should new local storage have lowercase, or sorry, local, it's local strategy here, local strategy. Should new local strategy have lowercase l? No, not in this case. Um, in this case, the proper syntax is capitalized. All right, now the last little bit of middleware that we need is is essentially, like I talked about before, middleware can be used to change the data. It can be used to change the format. It can be used to parse it. Another thing that it can do is it can add information to messages that are flowing back and forth. And so when we're thinking about navigating through a website as a logged in user, kind of like when we're going to be constantly validating that session, we're going to make sure it's a valid session. If we look at the finished version here, just looking at this visually on the homepage, I'm seeing constant reminders of the user information. I'm seeing that I can always see who I'm logged in as right here on every single page. So this information is constantly being transmitted. It's constantly double checking and making sure that I'm logged in so it can show me the right information on the menu bar. So every single request that I make needs to have some valid user information attached to it. If there is no valid user information, that means that I am logged out. And so in this case, as soon as I log out, user information isn't being transmitted with those messages anymore. And so my user experience looks different. But as soon as I log in, we should be transmitting user information with every single message that goes back and forth to the server, validating that session, showing the right information on the screen, including like the buttons underneath the cards, who I'm logged in as, the certain menu options when I'm logged in. And so we need some middleware that's going to attach that user information to every single message that's going up to our server. So that's our next piece of middleware. We're going to do app.use, and we have our rec, request, response, and a new one here, which is next. You may not have seen next before, but we'll talk about it in a second. So we're going to say res.locals.current user equals rec.user, and then next. And so essentially what this is doing is it's going to be passing the current user info to all routes. So all of the information that's going to every single route and every single controller is going to have a user a bundle of user information associated with it. That's going to allow all the controllers to read that user information and say, hey, this person is logged in. I should, do XYZ. Or, hey, this person has logged out. I need to, redirect them to the homepage. Or, hey, this menu bar needs to display, the logged in message up here. It's gonna attach that to every single message going to every single route and every single controller, and we'll see in a little bit how we make use of that information. So it's just attaching that into the request and as an additional property of that request. And then what this next is doing here is it's basically just saying, hey, after this middleware has been after this action has been done, just go on to the next thing. That's what next is for. Just, hey, after this is run, do the next thing in the sequence. Mattel says regional interface setting like time and date format, language, etc. Sorry, what are you referring to there? Was it something I said earlier? All right, I think that's all we need to do on our server here. So we've set up several new pieces of middleware, right? We've required Passport, our strategy, our user model. We've set up our session information. We've initialized Passport to tell our server we're using it. We've initialized our session. We've set up our strategy that we're using, which is our local strategy. And we've said, hey, that our local strategy information is going to be stored inside of our database, inside of the user model, using the user schema. And then we've set up our scrambler and our descrambler for that, password stuff. And finally, we've set it up so that we can pass user information with every single message that's going into our controllers. We're always passing that user information, and several of our controllers are going to make use of that information to send it back down into our client interface. Mattel says you were talking about tailoring the interface to the user that is logged in. Yeah, you could. Yes, then that's a great point. So another reason that you would want to pass that user information up with every single message is that, yeah, you might have certain settings that are based on the user's country of origin. That may be something you're capturing. So you have time zone information. You have like a news feed. Think about your news feed on Twitter or something like that. Your news feed is going to be tailored to where you're located, and all that's probably attached to your user information somewhere. And so the app is always going to need to read that, so it knows exactly what to display. Now, in our case, it's much simpler. We're just saying, hey, user whatever is logged in. We're displaying certain menu items, and we're making certain options available to edit or delete certain items. But yeah, it can be very complex as well. All right, so our server is basically done. Now we can set up our routes or our controllers next. I think what I want to do is set up our controllers, so the brains, the logic of the authentication, and then we're going to route. We'll figure out what routes we need to send requests to those specific controllers. Whoa, Rubeetle! Thank you for the sub. My goodness.
Rubeetle just subscribed.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And also, thank you to the I think I had a Prime sub earlier too. Heavy Carbs, yeah. I do think I thanked you already as well, but thank you again. That's certainly not required, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm glad you value my content enough to subscribe. That's great. That just shows that I'm doing something right. So thank you. All right, let's build out our controllers. So once again, and I need to save this first. So we already have a controller here for all of our cat stuff. And theoretically, I mean, there's nothing wrong with us just adding more controllers to this file. It would work, but it's probably not best practice. I think what we want to do instead is make a new file called user controller. Oh, sorry, lowercase u, user controller.js. And we're going to put our user specific like authentication controllers inside of this file. It's just going to help, like these cat controllers are more about like updating the data that's on screen, whereas our user controllers are going to be more about the behind the scenes authentication type stuff. So I think that we want to keep those a little bit of a separation of concerns there, a separation of purpose, which I think befits the MVC structure a little bit better. And since we already have a folder called controllers, we can put multiple files in there without hurting anything. That's one of the nice things about MVC structure.
Dark Tower Builder just followed.
Dark Tower, thank you for the follow. So that's one of the nice things about MVC structure is that it might look a little bit like overkill when you first start building out your app and you've only got one thing in each folder and you're like, this is lame. It's extra work for no reason. But as soon as you start adding features and start making your app more complex, now you have the ability to simply separate things out into individual files, but keep the organization of those folders. So that's why I like it. But there's a bunch of different ways to implement MVC, depending on what framework you're using or how you like to organize things. But it's more of a concept than a hard and fast rule. Like most things with JavaScript, it's more guidelines than rules. I don't think there's hardly any actual rules in JavaScript. That's the fun part. All right. So let's set up our user controller. There's a couple things we're going to need to require inside of our user controller. One of them obviously being passport. We're doing authentication, so we're going to need some passport. Require passport. And the other thing we're going to need is our user model. Require, and here I'm going to put 2 dots when I'm navigating. What does the 2 dots mean? If you're specifying a file path, what does the 2 dots mean? Hey, Syrian, welcome to the stream. Yes, and you're coming in hot with that first time chat and that first time correct answer. We're going whenever you see the hello, whenever you see the 2 dots in the file path, that means you're going up one folder. So in this case, that's what we have to do. We're going from inside of our controllers folder, we're going up one path, and then we're going down into the models folder and accessing our user model. Hey, Brown Skills.
Chris Pocket just
Oh,
followed.
thank you for the follow, Chris Pocket. Yeah, it's a parent directory. Exactly. So 2 dots, whereas before we just used the 1 dot because we were inside the same folder and we just wanted a different file. So that's the difference. All right, now let's start with the easy stuff. Let's start with how we render our login and register pages. And those are going to be really simple. We built those earlier, right? We built login, EJS, and register.ejs. Super simple. So const login page is going to just be, oops, we have our request and we have our response. And that's just going to be a res.render. We want to render our login page. And I'm going to leave it at that for now. If you're looking at the finished version, you'll see there's something else there. And I'll explain what that is and what it's for in just a bit. But for now, let's just do this. And same thing for our register page. Register page. We're going to render register. Now notice that I don't have to specify where this register page is located, even though it's in a completely different location. It's all the way over here inside of my views folder, all the way down here. So a bit of a tough question, but how does my app know where the heck this login and register page are located? Because this is all I have to specify. How does it know where that page lives? Renate says magic. Okay, fair. Good guess. Any other guesses? How does it know where it lives? And it's okay to say I don't know. It's a valid answer as well. Sorcery, okay. I like the enthusiasm. Think about when you're setting up the basics of your server. I know that we did this last time, so it's okay if we don't remember. When we were setting up our server, we specified some stuff. So let's look at that real quick. I'm just flipping back to my server real quick. And I set up a few things, right? I said where my static pages are going to live, but we're not using static pages. We're using dynamic EJS. And so that's not valid here. But the next thing we did was we set our view engine and we specified it as EJS. And so our server now knows, hey, I'm going to be looking in a folder called views, and I should find some EJS files in there. When I'm being, basically my server knows when I'm being asked to render something, I have a view engine, it's EJS, and so I'm going to look for a views folder and look for things that are written in EJS. So that's this one little line here is allowing us to call on things to render them, and it knows which folder to look in. So, yep, I wouldn't blame you for not remembering that. But that's how we can easily render these. All right. Okay, black magic then. Fair enough. Sure. Some of it is magic, right? So it just works under the hood, right? It's that abstraction that it's obfuscated and abstracted away from us. Um, so we've rendered our 2 pages here. Um, Now let's actually get into the meat of it. Let's see how we can log in users and register users. I'm thinking about which one I want to do first. There's 3 things we're going to need to do. We're going to need to register people, log in people, and what's the third thing? Register, log in, and thinking about actions that a user might want to do related to authentication. Register, log in, and reset password. Ooh, that's a great, yes, that's a great suggestion. We don't have that option, but log out. Yeah, log out. But no, reset password is fair. We're not going to be implementing that here, but hey, that's a fair answer. Yep. I was thinking of this the basic 3, which is register, log in, and log out. So we're going to need at least 3 controllers for that. We're actually going to have 4, but first thing I'm going to do here is set up a basic function for authentication. Port, passport, there we go. Authenticate using our local strategy. So here we're just calling on passport. We're using a built-in authentication method. We're saying, hey, we're using the local strategy. And then this is basically just whatever we want to happen when authentication occurs. So basically, we don't have to worry about how it's being done. We're just telling it what to do when it happens. So if authentication is successful, I want it to redirect. Success redirect. I want it to redirect to the home page. Okay. Oh, and this needs to be inside of an object. I apologize. Here we go. So if login is successful, go to the home page. If login is failure, redirect. If it's not successful, just basically reload the login page. So refresh it and have them try again. And then I'll put this in. I don't know if you strictly need this option, but it's going to be false anyway, so I'm just going to add it. But the last thing is if you want a message to appear, like a flash, an alert to appear if the login is unsuccessful, we would need to install like a flash package for that to work, and we're not going to. So I've just turned it off. But this is something else you can do. You can flash a message to say, "Hey, please try again. Your username and password is wrong." And so there's lots of different ways you can do that, but we're setting this option to false for now. So this is just basically saying, hey, authentication is going to happen. Where should we go once it's done? And Spaghetti says EJS is an MVC framework. So EJS is a view engine. So EJS is just a way to dynamically generate HTML. It's not really like uh, an app structure thing. It's just a way for us to to perform JavaScript operations inside of something that looks like HTML. So what you'll see if you look inside of some of the EJS files that we have in our app, you'll see things that look like JavaScript, which are enclosed in like carets. So we can do things like loops. We can do things like we can put variables in there. We can pass data from our controllers into the EJS, and then the browser will render it out as HTML. And so, yeah, it's kind of like React light, like super light. It doesn't have nearly the functionality of React, but some of the flavor is kind of the same. Syrian says delay for login attempts. Yeah, we could also put it in the delay, prevent users from logging in constantly, spamming it. There's all sorts of protections you can do. Spaghetti says, what is providing the MVC then? MVC is structure. MVC literally stands for Model View Controller. And so that's our folder structure that we have here. So our models are our, inside of our models folder here. Boop, boop. Our views are right here, and our controllers are here. It's just it's a philosophy. And so what's happening here is, so EJS is basically, if we look at like our home here, I'm embedding JavaScript into something that looks like HTML. Now, this is not HTML, this is EJS. All of this is EJS, but I can use HTML tags for static things, and then I can embed JavaScript operations within those tags. I wouldn't call, and I would be loath to make a strict comparison between React and EJS because React can do so much more. Um, EJS is really good for if you have something that's mostly static and you just want to inject a little bit of, a little bit of dynamic ability into a mostly static page. EJS, I think, is a decent choice because, I just want to loop through these cards and put them on there, then I can just add a simple loop in and leave everything else pretty static. And then I can just embed my variables straight into the card text. So if I don't want something to be, if I have a mostly static site and I just want a few things to be dynamic, maybe I use EJS instead of React. Then there's other solutions out there too. There's handlebars. Um, there's uh, there's others. I'm blanking right now on what they are, but handlebars. I think Pug is another one, right? Um, just much more lightweight than React. Okay, let's go back to our controller here. So we've done our login. We've done our register page. So we're rendering our login page. We're rendering our register page. We have our login operation here. Now let's set up our registration operation. So if I want to register a user, let's do this. Let's see, const, oops, where am I going? Const register user. And I'm talking to the database. So what type of function do I need to be using? If I'm talking to the database or anything that's external to my application, what type of function should I use? Doesn't have to be a database, could be an API. Yeah, async. I like your enthusiasm. Async. Yeah. And we have a request and a response. Um, and inside of these types of functions, if I'm talking to an external database or an API, if I'm talking to something external to my application, it could be unsuccessful, right? There's a probably a 50-50 chance that something might not work. So what's a good way to what's something that I should probably put inside of my function to handle any errors that might come up and make sure that my app doesn't crash? Yeah, try catch. Exactly. This will prepare ourselves for potentially getting errors and tell our controller exactly what to do with those, exactly where to shove those errors that they get um, in a polite way. So we'll just console log it. But you could do something else here. You could throw an error to the user. There's all sorts of things you can do because you're catching the error, right? Oh, thank you for the follow, Kosher Kyle. You're catching the error, and so once you have it, you can do a lot of different things with it. You could display it to the user. You could flash it up in an error message. You could, whatever. We're going to console log it, but I do also want to do something else here. If I get an error, oh, thank you for the follow, Dauta.
Just followed.
If I get an error here on registration, I don't want to leave the registration page. So I'm going to do a redirect, and I'm going to go back to the register page. So just re-render it, clear out the, they screwed something up. We got an error. Something was wrong. Let's just redirect back there and try again. So two things there. Now, inside of my try block, I am going to be essentially packaging up the information that I'm getting from the form and essentially putting it into the database, right? So let's do that. I'm going to take the username and password that I'm getting from the registration, username, password, and I'm going to package those up. Well, actually, no, sorry, I'm not packaging them up. I'm taking them out of the request body and I'm putting them into username and password. So I'm taking the full request body and I'm extracting the username and password out of it. And then I'm going to put those into my user schema. So const user, oops, how did I do that? Sorry, rec.body. There we go. This is, and what do we call this? When we take something, it's backwards, right? We're taking something and we're assigning it in a really weird way. But what do we call this? When we have something and we have a list in brackets on the left side of the equal sign, and then we have a larger object on the right side. Yeah, destructure. Exactly. Spaghetti developer says JavaScript. Okay, fair. Technically correct. The best kind of correct. Yes, that's called destructuring. It's a great, useful tool to use. You can take a very large object and you can simultaneously extract things out of it and assign them to individual variables. So it's useful. And we're going to create a new instance of that user model, passing in the username. And then through the magic of Passport, we can simply await user.register. So we don't have to know exactly what's happening here, but we can just say, all right, take this user information, register this user, passing in that user information and the password information, and it's going to do everything for us. It's going to scramble it up, it's going to store it in the database, it's going to save it, and all we need to do is say register. And then after we do that, we've stored it in the we call it syntactic sugar. Yes. And after we've stored it in the database, that's all well and good. So we've taken this user information, they've put in their information, but if I'm registering on a website, I've put in my user information, it's valid, hooray, I'm allowed to proceed. What do I need to do next? What do I expect to do next? I've just registered for this site. What should happen next? Yeah, exactly. Abdil says, yeah, it should also log you in. So it could register you just fine, but then imagine if it just kicked you right back out. Yeah, it should either redirect to the login page or it should take you back home while being logged in automatically. We're going to choose option 2, where it's going to go ahead and authenticate at the same time. So it's registering and authenticating at the same time, and it's going to just let you go to the home page. Exactly, as Palante and Abdil said. So the next thing we need to do is then immediately do the authentication. Oops. Authenticate. So it's going to authenticate them first using the local strategy, and then it's going to immediately redirect to the home page. So we're doing 2 things there at once. We're registering the user, and we're authenticating them immediately and redirecting to the home page. Now, again, you could do it the other way that Abdil suggested, where you register them and then you redirect them to the login page, and they have to type in their information again. And some websites do that. Absolutely. We're going to make it a little easier on folks, but if you're trying to be more secure, that may be the method that you go with, is you force them to actually log in using the information they just registered with. Yep. All right, so I think that's all we need to do there. We can register people now. And the next thing we need to do is, well, the last thing we need to do for this controller is log people out. So this one's very simple, fortunately. Const logout user And that's very simple. Once again, Passport is our friend. We can just call logout and it will take care of everything for us. Now, if you've done logouts before, Passport changed the syntax for this fairly recently. So if you've used Passport logouts before, I think because the last time I did a logout like this was a while ago, and I tried to use it, and it wasn't working, and I was getting a weird error, and I was like, what the heck? But Passport changed the way this looks. It's a little bit more complex now, but not a lot. We just have to have it forces some error handling here. Return next. Oops, no. Next. Come on, stop it. There we go. If error, and then we can do our redirect. So after they log out, we just want to send them to the home page. I think previously you didn't have to do this if error thing. You could just do log out and then redirect and send them back to the home page. But there's a little extra spice you got to put in there now. All right. Last thing we need to do is we need to export all this stuff because we are using our controllers are in a separate file from our routes. And so we can just export everything. So we can import it into our router and then we'll take a break. So basically just doing export login user, login page, login user, register page, register user, and log out user. Okay, I think that's everything. And so really this is the meat of our authentication, which I think is not too terribly bad, right? There's not a ton of stuff here. It's more just calling on Passport methods. And we're going to be once we put our routes together, we'll kind of see how they're passing through that, what authentication is, what controllers are being called on when, what type of requests we're handling, and then we should be able to test it out and add a little bit of additional functionality to our have these buttons in our have these buttons appear conditionally down here, have the information appear in our nav bar, and just add a little bit of visual flair to this, and then we'll be done. Nice. All right, let's take a 5-minute break, and when we come back, we're going to slap together our routes based on the paths that we've already seen. Remember those login. We have login, we have register, we're going to have a logout route. Put that into our routes folder, and then start testing it out, make sure it works, and then, fix up the additional functionality. All right, 5 minutes on the clock. Reset the timer here. When we come back from the break, we'll finally be able to test this thing out and make sure it works. All right, here we go. 5 minutes. See you soon. Woohoo, indeed. Okay, folks, we got about a minute left on the clock. And Chris Renshaw, I see your error, and I agree with Late Key's assessment there. I think it's probably missing a require statement, and I may be missing that statement too. Um, yeah, you'll need it at the top of your server. You need to make sure you're requiring express session. So once the timer counts down here, I'll verify that I have that as well, and everybody should check. Um, but yeah, great catch there, Late Key. Livio says, "Why is this app only for cats? Do you disrespect dogs?" No, absolutely not. I love dogs. Um, my dog is actually sleeping behind me on the couch. You can't see him, but he's there. He is snoozing in his comfy couch. So, nope, love dogs. I just have lots of pictures of cats on my phone. All right, stopping the timer. I foster kittens for the Humane Society, so I have a crap ton of photos. And so, why not build an app so I could use some of those photos there? Alrighty. So yeah, let's double check that require statement. Flipping over to our server.js really quickly. And yes, I am missing that require statement. So excellent catch there, Late Key. Everyone, please do go into your server.js and make sure that you are
JVNK was
requiring.
just followed.
JVNK, thank you for the follow. Make sure that you are requiring express session. I put mine right here. There we go. Const session require express sessions. That should get rid of that error saying that session is not defined. And that's a great. That's actually, I'm really glad you got that error. I mean, not because it wasn't working, but um, if you see something like that in your server, that's generally you forgetting to, or us, me too, forgetting to require something. If it says something is not defined, that means it just doesn't understand what it is, and so that generally means you're missing a require statement. So I hope that works better now. Um, be sure you add this line, require express session, and now your server should be able to understand what that is and what it's for. Okay, we have finished our controllers, so let's build out our routes. And once again, like we talked about before, um, our routes are, we could absolutely put them in the same file, or in the same file right here as our routes for like our pages, and our CRUD operations for our cards, and our cat operations and that kind of thing. But I don't think we should. Because all these authentication things are very different than the types of CRUD operations we're doing against the visual elements, such as the cards and the images and that kind of thing. So I think instead of that, I want to create a new file for user routes. User routes.js. So I think we want to keep those routes separate from each other. And we'll still be able to access all the routes, no problem. If they're in separate files, it's all good. We'll just tell our server where these other routes are, and it'll be able to access those as well. So inside of our user routes, all we really need to do is just account for all the paths, the authentication paths that we set up earlier. So let's remind ourselves what some of those are. So on our login page, we have an action when a user logs in, right? We need to be able to route that to our login user controller. When somebody registers, we need to route that to our registration controller. We're also going to need a couple of routes to display the two pages, right? If I click on a button that says login, I expect it to display the login page, right? And so we need to connect that to our that controller that we built to display the login page. Same with registration. So makes sense, right? We're going to need routes for each of those things. And finally, we're going to need a logout route. And so that's, I believe that's 5 routes that we're going to need. And so I'm going to go ahead and make I made the file already. And so we're going to need to build at least 5 routes in here for all of our paths and all of our potential actions. So const express equals require express. Actually, I could have copied and pasted these from, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to copy and paste all of my require statements from my other router. So I'm just grabbing everything from cat routes and I'm going to paste it here at the top of my user routes. Now, I do need to make sure I'm accessing the right controller. So instead of the cat controller, I want to access the user controller, just like so. And I'm going to call this user controller. And then I'm also using the express router, which is going to automatically handle all that routing for us and move traffic wherever it needs to go. So my paths. Yeah, and as Syrian says, Stack Overflow or ChatGPT is a good starting point for error searching. 100%, yeah. I actually use ChatGPT for helping me with errors in my SQL statements at work. If I have a query, especially a really complicated query that's not working correctly, and I don't want to spend a long time just combing through it looking for a missing comma, then I just dump it into ChatGPT and it can tell me what's wrong generally immediately. Or why I'm not getting the results I expect. So it's very good for that. But you should, as Syrian says, don't follow all suggestions blindly. Absolutely. It gets things wrong a lot. But GPT-4 is pretty good. All right, so I'm going to have a router, and my first route that I'm going to do is I think I'm going to do my login route. So I'm going to say route is going to be login. And I think my first path that I want to have is the one that's going to display the login page. And so I'm going to be, in order to display the login page, I'm probably going to be just clicking on a button, on my nav bar. And so if we're thinking about methods, like default, traffic methods, we're talking like post, get, put, patch, all those methods. If I just click a link on a nav bar, what method is that going to use? If I'm on a nav bar and I just click a link, what method is that? Yeah, it's going to be get. It's going to be the default, which is just get. So my route for getting the login page is going to be using the get method, and I'm going to access the user controller and login page. Okay. Now, interesting, that didn't. Let me make sure that I get my require statement right here, because it should have. I would expect that to have changed color. Let me just double check that. Require. I'm going to navigate to the path here. Controllers. And I may have spelled something wrong. Login page. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, let's see if I did it wrong somewhere. And also my next path here, though, we already know that we have a path using login, and that's when I literally submit the login form. When I submit the login form, we already know that is using login is using the post method. So in my router, that post method needs to match my route. So my next route needs to be a post so that my server is sending the traffic to the right route. User controller, login user. All right. And then my next route, let's go ahead and handle our registration. So that is simply just going to be a route register. And same here, we're going to have two paths, one get and one post. We're going to get the registration page. Register page. I'm going to double check those controller names because they're not turning the color I would expect. So we'll check those in a minute. And then for registration, if I go to that form, we can see once again that is a post method. So that needs to match my route. Post user controller dot register user. Okay. Phil Snow says, I don't get it. Ha ha ha. Nice. Spaghetti says, unless you make all your nav bar buttons do a form submit method, yeah, probably not ideal. I think in nav bar generally you want to use like anchor tags and links because you don't want to reload the page necessarily. I mean, yeah, I would. I think it's overkill. Why wouldn't you just do a route, and get the appropriate page without doing a form submit? All right, then my last route here is just going to be for logouts. And since we're only going to need one route here, because there's no logout page, right? You could have a logout page, like a one that pops up and says, you have been logged out. But we don't have that. We just go back to the home page. So we can just say log out, get user controller, logout user. With a picture of a sad cat. Yeah, sure. And then finally, we do also need to export this because we need to be able to access it from outside of the file. There we go. Save that. All right. These still didn't turn the right color. I would expect these to turn yellow, and I'm not sure why not. So that could be something that we troubleshoot. But we'll go with it for now. Express router, require express. Yeah, everything looks fine. So I'm going to check my exports here on my controller. Yeah, I'm exporting them. So I guess we'll see. Because if you look at my cat routes here, so in my existing routes, you can see that all of the controllers are yellow.
Ross Van Run just followed.
Thank you for the follow, Rosman Run. Yeah, and so a nice little visual indicator in VS Code is if it can find a valid, if your router can find a valid controller, it'll turn it yellow. So these are not, and I don't know why. Well, I guess we'll figure out where I screwed up at some point. Got that. Okay. Now, the very last thing we need to do is route traffic to this router. And you might be like, but this is already a router. It's sending traffic to the controllers. Well, the hub, if you're thinking about your application, the hub of all traffic is always through the server. And so if we go back to our server here, we can see that for our existing routes, we're passing traffic into the server, and then it branches out and gets routed to all the correct controllers within the individual router files. And so we need to do the exact same thing here. We can just say app.use, and we're just going to use the home path there. This might seem a little weird, but it works. We say user routes. Here we go. And I need to require my user routes. Require routes, user routes. Okay, so now my server knows where to send traffic. And you'll notice that these are both going to the same path, which isn't really ideal. You generally like to kind of break those up. Like one of these could be, this could be like auth/auth something, and all of your paths would have to contain auth. But it does work because if it can't find it in this route file, it will go into the next one and look for it there. So it does work to route traffic. It's not ideal. If I had more time, I would modify this to have unique routes for each app.use, but it does work technically. All right. We're almost done. And I think I just want to test and see if it will run if we get any errors. And the nice thing about routers, if a router isn't working correctly, it's probably going to throw an error right away. So let's just run it and see what we get. All right. Yes. Okay, we got a crash. That's good. Let's see what it tells us. Nothing. Okay. Let's try again. It's like it didn't display the full error. There we go. Okay, perfect. So yes, as I thought, there's something wrong with my router. Um, and sometimes VS Code will do that. It will like cut off these errors. I knew immediately by looking at this that it wasn't giving me the full error. And so if that happens to you, I would kill the app and try again. So if you're getting an error, it should always show you like the error text. Um, and if you're handling errors appropriately. And so this is like an incomplete message. So I just tried again. So route.get requires a callback function, but got undefined. Okay. Inside of my user routes. That's what I thought. All right. Just checking spelling on things. If anybody sees anything wrong, shout it out. Express.router. If push comes to shove, I can always just copy from the completed version. But I don't like to do that. I like to try to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. If you figure it out, you get a cookie, virtual cookie. You know what I mean? Express controllers, user controller, express.router. Still not seeing a problem here. Syrian, thank you for the cookie, Syrian. All right, I'm just going to paste in the completed version here real quick. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the problem, CyberBenny. And that's what I like about those visual indicators is that I knew this probably wasn't going to work. I knew this probably wasn't because these were the wrong color. But I chose to try anyway. I'm going to double check. I am exporting these. So I'm just going to paste in the finished version. We'll just visually see if there's any differences. Whoops. Maybe not. Hang on. Oh, it's just that's an optional thing. We could convert it. We don't have to use require syntax here, I don't think, but it's just giving us an optional syntax change. It says file is a common JS module. It may be converted to an ES module. So we don't have to. Okay, so still not showing up. All right, that's good. So that means that this is correct. Everything here is correct. So the problem is probably in my controllers. So when I pasted in the finished version, those colors still didn't change. Yeah, and that's the next thing to check. Exactly. We're gonna work backwards here. Oh, and I think I figured it out. Just looking at this, do you see the problem? We don't have to go anywhere else. Just whatever's on my screen. Do you see it? Just with what's visible on my screen. I think I already spotted it. Yes, it's a S. Exactly. Now, watch this. Watch. So I missed an S. Watch what happens when I put the S in. Watch the color. Boop. There we go. So that was a color indicator that I missed. So a valid export is always going to be green. Once again, these little subtle visual cues that can be so helpful and figure out where you screw up. Yeah, and I didn't see that. So if I go back here, blue, that means it's a method, but it's probably not being triggered. Now it turns green. That means it's working. So if I go back to my router, I'm going to save this too. Here we go. If I go back to my router, now look at that. It's yellow. Now this one's going to be blue. It's okay. It's not. It doesn't have the same structure as the others, but this is telling me this is working. Syrian says cargo would have barked at you. Yeah, and if I was using something like TypeScript, it probably would have told me immediately. Unfortunately, JavaScript is not as finicky. So we do have to rely on some of those VS Code helping hands to help us with that kind of thing. But now here we go. So oh, and it's telling me my server is in use already. And this is probably unique to me. It says server instance is already in use, so I need to just pick a new server number. I'll just use like I need to change it in my env file as well. I'll use 5,000. That's a me problem. Um, and that, just change it in both places. Okay, there we go. So now once I did that, I needed, because I have other instances of this running in the background, and so I had a server conflict on my localhost port number. So now we can see that I'm connected and my server is running. Syrian says you have a fixer or linter available for JS. I mean, well, TypeScript is really good at that. There's all sorts of other hand holders that you can use. There's a ton of extensions you can install within VS Code to help you catch these kinds of things. You could use GitHub Copilot or other, autocomplete helpers. But I don't generally use those things. I use TypeScript, because it's TypeScript. But I like to practice troubleshooting and try to know when I'm doing something wrong and do it as kind of like a group effort, because I think it's more fun that way. But maybe I'm just a sadist. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So we've got it running. Now let's see if we can hit the home page. I'm on 5,000. Yeah. Okay. So it works. Yeah. You didn't see anything change there, but yeah. So that's working, which is good. Now I want to just try to see if I can manually navigate to the register page. We don't have a nav bar link for this yet. Let me just do register. I'm going to manually do this. Register. Hey, there we go. Register page. Let's see if I can register a user. I'm just going to do test1, and my password is just going to be test1. So submit. Okay, perfect. So Google that's just Chrome warning me to change password. Um, user cat password nip. Now let's check the database. Let's see if this stuff is actually being written to the database, because right now we have no idea. We're going to add some stuff that's going to tell us, but we haven't done it yet. So let's check inside of MongoDB and see what we have inside of our database. Now I'm currently writing to CatBook 2 right here. And so we can see that I have a user collection now. And oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry. All right. And CatBook 2. And am I running to CatBook 2? Okay, so it created the cats collection, but I'm not seeing the users collection. Let me double check I'm writing to the right. Yeah, so I'm writing to CatBook 2. So I'm not sure that it actually wrote the user information. Oh, wait, I need to refresh this. Sorry, that's why. There we go. Now it's working. So the one thing about if you're looking in MongoDB manually, you have to refresh, and there's a refresh button that you can click in order to show the most current data inside of your collections. Because if you don't do that, it won't do it. That's gotten me before. Now, if I look at users here inside of my users collection, we can see that test1 user has been created and stored. Ah, Scotty Coates, you just subscribed. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Good to see you, Scotty. So my salted and hashed passwords are being stored correctly, all that encrypted information. So we can't see any of it. It's all being stored. The username is being stored. So perfect. Now, and I should theoretically also be logged in. So let's see if I can upload a cat. So I'm on 5,000 there. Let's see if I can upload. All right. Give me a cat name. Somebody give me a clever cat name. Binks, Pedro, Mr. Fluff. I like Pedro. Pedro. Age is going to be 5. Favorite food is going to be Meow Zucker Cat. Favorite food is going to be sardines. Fun fact is going to be can jump from the floor to the top of the fridge. Fridge. All right. We'll choose a file here. Well, I love this scruffy guy. Choose that one. Submit it. Okay, perfect. So submission was successful. Now let's check our database and see. Now we don't see user information here because we haven't like configured our view to show that yet. But let's check and see if that information is being stored correctly in the database. And actually, now I'm thinking it might not be, just because I think we didn't modify the cat model yet. But we'll check. Got to do a couple more tweaks here. Yeah, okay. So we need to tweak our cat model so it's storing that reference to the user, and we haven't done that yet. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna just see if I can delete this. We can. Good. Now I'm gonna go back to my code here, and inside of my cat model, I need to add that reference to the user that submitted it. And that means we're also going to have to modify the controller to also submit that user information. So cat controller, or sorry, cat model, I apologize. We're going to add just another element into this schema. We're going to be storing some user information. And we're just going to call that owner. And it's going to have a type, just like these other ones do. So, type string, type number, string, string, string. But if you remember, what we're storing in that owner field is not necessarily a string. It's a reference. It's a reference to a different document in a different location, right? It's a reference to that user ID in MongoDB that's associated with that cat. And so this is going to have a special type, which is mongoose schema types object ID, because that's what those unique IDs are called in MongoDB. It's an object ID. And what we're referencing is our user model. So basically all we're saying here is that this schema is going to reference our other schema. It's going to reference this one. So we're just tying the two together. We're creating a relationship between them. And that's how you do that. So we're referencing our other schema here, and we're storing that information in the owner field. All right, so I'm going to save that. And it is crashing, I think, because, server already in use. Why are you doing that? That's annoying. It keeps saying that every server I use is already in use. I don't know why, but let me just let me kill it. Let's see if that happens, if that works. We'll make a couple changes and then I'll fire it back up. It just doesn't like me right now. Okay. So we made that, but now we need to modify our controller to save that information in there as well. Yeah, you can post a link, Syrian. Yeah, an ESLint is pretty common. Yeah. So let's go into our cat controller and modify it so it's saving this owner information in there and referencing the correct user. Yeah, thank you for posting that, Syrian. All right, so inside of our cat controller, we're just going to make a couple of small tweaks. We're not really going to add anything new here. We're just going to tweak a few things. So on the home page, first thing I'm going to do is I'm finding all the cats, right? I'm going into the cat, I'm going into that cat schema. I'm getting all the cat information about all the possible cats, but I also want to pull down the owner information from that user schema. And so I can do that by just adding a little bit here on the end and say populate owner. And what that's going to do is it's going to get all the cat data and then also all the information about the owner from the other schema. So it's going to get them both and mush them together. because we want to send information about the owner to the home page as well. So that's the first change. All right, and then in create cat, we're also going to need to add an additional line here. So in create cat, what we're doing is we're building out the cat schema. So we're building out the name, the age, the food, the fact, the image, but we also need to populate that owner field. Owner is going to be rec.user.id, and that's just going to grab whatever whatever the user is logged in. That's going to grab them and attach them to the owner field, and it's going to create that object reference. Hey, Fafin, good to see you. Oh, I hope your work gets better. So this is going to populate that object ID field with the ID of the person that owns it, with the person who's logged in. It's going to grab it and dump it in there. And then we don't need to change anything else there. Params ID, render that. I think that should be good. No more changes there. Okay, we do need to make a couple of small changes. We actually do need to make a couple of small changes on update and delete. So when we are trying to stop users from making unauthorized changes, we can show or hide those buttons on the homepage for the edit and delete. We can show or hide the edit and delete buttons, but somebody who was really determined could still fudge it, right? They could fudge the path, and they could type the path manually in the browser to do an edit. They could still get there, and they could grab the ID of the one they want to edit, and paste it into the browser manually, and cheese it, and get to the point where they could potentially be changing somebody else's information. And so even if we're hiding the buttons on the front end, we're gonna want to add some additional protections inside of our controller. And so I think that it's a good idea to have as many protections as you can to protect your routes and prevent unauthorized editing. And so one place we're going to do it is right here. So before we do an update, before we perform this update operation, we want to validate that the ID of the person who's attempting to edit should match the ID that's associated with that cat already. So we want to compare those IDs and make sure that they match. Straw Hat, thank you so much for the follow. Is that a One Piece reference? We should make sure that the ID associated with the cat matches the ID of the person who's trying to do the edit, and then we let them edit. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to say let. We're going to do a find first. Await cat dot find by ID. Rec params ID. And then we're going to check the owner value for the cat. If cat dot owner equals the person who's attempting to do the edit, rec dot user dot ID, then we let them do this. We let them perform this find by ID and update. So if that's true, then they're allowed to update. Otherwise, nothing should happen. Hey, Fafin. I'm glad you're enjoying the TypeScript stuff. That's good. Thank you, Fafin. I appreciate you. Okay, so we're just it's just a little bit of additional protection here, and we're going to do the same thing for deletions. So same thing, right? We don't want people just out there willy-nilly deleting crap. that isn't theirs, and by cheesing it and typing things into the browser manually. So one way we can do that is just double validating that that everything is correct here. All right, I think those were the two, because edit and delete, those are the things that are going to materially change other people, could potentially materially change other people's work. And so we want to add that additional layer of protection there inside of our controllers. I think that's all the changes I want to make for now. We should be writing in our create statement, we should be writing the user ID now, passing in that logged in user information and writing it to the database, associating with a cat with a user. Syrian says, I'm surprised how often you can increment browser URLs to access somebody else's data. Yes, and that's the kind of thing we're trying to prevent here. We're validating, we're doing a double validation. We're going to hide the buttons and we're going to validate against the logged in user. All right. Yeah. And you can also, there's other ways you can protect routes as well. You can even write custom middleware to do double check on even before the routes reach the controllers. You can also write middleware to check that as well. Did I forget something? Let me see. Oh man, yeah, you do have a good eye. So I forgot my let cat line there. I was copying and pasting too quickly. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Oscrypto. Okay. So that's a good start there. Thinking here. We got our server. We're going to be making some changes to the views. I'm just manually thinking through the routes and controllers here, making sure that the backend stuff is done first. It's essentially the same cat twice. So first we're doing a find, and then we're just doing a find. This is read only. We're doing a read operation first, validating the owner ID, and then we're actually performing the edit or delete operation. Yeah, same cat twice. Deja vu, Matrix. Yeah. Okay, I think that's all the changes we want to make for now. I think. Let's try it again. We'll see if it yells at me again. I don't know why it's giving me these errors about server in use. Ugh. It's saying that every port I try is in use, and I don't know why. Oh, because I have two servers open. Ha 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 ha. All right, let's try again. Oh, I'm a dingus. All right. There we go. That worked. I had it running. I had NodeMon running in two separate terminal instances, and so it was starting the server twice each time. Um, so yeah, don't do that on the same port. Yeah, it was starting it on the same port twice. We saw nothing. All right, now I'm going to manually go to my. I should be able to go to my login route this time. And oh, that's why is that centered weird? Oh well. Let's see if I can log in. Okay. See if I can upload. We said Pedro. 5. Choose a file. Submit. Ooh, I don't know if that's going to work. Ooh. All right, let's check and see if it wrote to the database. Okay, so it wrote to the database, and it stored the owner information. So it didn't. It was supposed to redirect back to the home page. It didn't, but the data did get written, and we can see that the owner information has also been written. So perfect. So we're just missing, something in the redirect there at the end, but that's good. All right, so data is being written. Yay! Yeah, that's the hard part, right? So now we just need to figure out why the redirect isn't working. I'm going to go back to the home page here and we'll see what's there. See if that'll even render. I'm probably getting an error in the console. Okay, it says schema hasn't been registered for model user. Fair enough. We'll figure out what that means. Oh, and I think I know why. We'll see in just a second here. Maybe. Let's check the controller. All right, we've got cat model there, Multer. And schema hasn't been registered for model user. Let's see. At connection.model. Unfortunately, it's not going to tell me exactly where the problem is. But we'll figure it out. We saw nothing. That's all right. All right. So it's probably in cat controller somewhere is the problem. Let's redirect back home. So this was successful. This was successful. The redirect back home was not. All right, so when we redirect back home, we're calling this particular route right here. We're calling this path. And so that's going through get all cats. So I'll double check that that's right. User versus user. Yeah, it could be. That's a good call. Let's look at that. Res. Okay, so there is one more thing in here. I'll go ahead and add it. I don't think it's the problem, but I was going to save this for when we work on the nav bar. We're also going to be passing in some additional information. Right now, we're passing in the cats object to display the card, but we're also going to be passing in the username so we can display it in the nav bar. I'll go ahead and just add that. I don't know that that's the problem. Okay, yeah, so we're still getting an error there. Wish it would tell me where the problem is. User rec.user. Okay. So we are going to add this in a couple places. I'll go ahead and add it just for completeness. Basically, inside of our nav bar, we're going to always want to pass in the user information to display on our nav bar on every single page. And the reason that is because we want to show, you are logged in as user whatever at the top of each nav bar on every single page. And because we're using the nav bar on every page, we need to pass that information in so it can display. So I don't think this is the problem, but just to rule it out, I'm going to go ahead and add this. So we need to add it on our render for the home page. We need to add it on our render for the upload page, rec.user. We need to add it, basically all of our renders. Oops. Oh. We need to add it on our render for the edit page. And let's see, I think we need the upload page as well. Save that. Yeah, that could be the problem, Renitz. I just need to figure out where it is. Rec.user, upload page, rec.user, edit page, rec.user. Oh, and then I also need to add it on the login and register pages as well. So we can go ahead and do that as well. That's just in the user controllers. And same as before, we're just passing in a little bit of additional information as an object, information about the user, so we can display that in our nav bar. All right. Schema hasn't been registered for model user. All right, let's look at the user model. I am exporting it. And it is, I know it's working because we're able to write to it. Okay. So let's check the routes. Just make sure I'm not missing anything there. User versus, yeah, it could be. I wonder where the problem is though. Take the S off. Where? Though. Okay. It's fine. Nothing there. Where's the S? Where does it need to go from? User model. Sorry, the name. Which file though? I see what you're saying. I mean, user model, but exactly where? If you spotted it, then kudos to you. Controller. User schema. Okay, let's look again. Oh, yeah, you're right. You caught it. Good job to you. So no more error. Wow, so that's interesting. It still wrote correctly. It still wrote to the correct collection because that was already plural. So this is an interesting little quirk of Mongoose. So you can specify the name of a model, and if that name is already plural, um, Mongoose will not repluralize the the name. So it wouldn't say like user with two S's. It would keep it plural. So the collection name was correct. And that's why it was able to write successfully, because it was just like, yeah, users. It's all good. It works. But as Chris Renshaw so deftly spotted with their eyes of eagles and falcons, um, that that was exactly the problem. This should have just been user and not users, so it could read from it correctly. So let's try again. And now, as soon as we did that, it started working. Look at that. Okay, so Chris Renshaw, I'm giving you a high five, like through the screen. Boop. So, yeah, that's for you. Thank you so much. Um, much appreciated. Jackpot. Yes. Exactly, CX. Well, that's a really rather silly feature. Yeah, it is kind of interesting. Rascal 2, a tremendous streamer, did a very in depth test of how Mongoose names collections, um, using weird words like sheep or like fish, like things that don't have an S for plurals. And somebody has hard coded inside of Mongoose, like all these things that don't have S's for plurals, and so it changes the collection name based on that. It's wild. I love it. It's so weird. I love it. Okay. Thanks for sticking with me through that. Awesome troubleshooting, Chris Renshaw. Very well spotted. All right. Now, I can clearly upload things. We already saw that those things are in the database. I can so it can read correctly, but you'll notice it's not displaying, any of that user specific information. I am going to do one more test here. I'm going to see if I can log out. Okay, log out is not a function. Maybe that's the wrong path. Res.logout is not a function. Okay. Bean. Yeah, that's it. That would be a good name, right? Yeah. At logout user. Okay. Oh, okay. So it's telling me where the problem is. It's saying, hey, in user controller, res.logout is not a function at logout user. So it's telling me where the problem is. So we'll look there. And this is not uncommon to encounter errors when you're trying to do authentication because it's all very precise. So I'm not super phased by this. I encountered a lot of this stuff the first time I did it, and so let's check. It's just part of the process. So it looks like I made a mistake here in logout user somewhere. All right. Oh, I did it. Yep, here's the problem. I spotted it pretty quickly, this time anyway. This should be a rec.logout, not a res.logout. So I just typed it wrong. Now I'm using, and I would expect to use both the request and response here because I'm getting a request for logout, and then I'm sending a response to redirect back to the homepage. So that pretty quickly clued me in when I saw that I'm not using both of these. So the request, we are by the user putting that input, they're saying the request is for a logout, the response is to redirect. So that's the problem. Mattel says, no wonder so many people complain about the English language. They're trying to code database stuff, and there's all these weird permutations of plural words from their singular counterparts. Yeah, English sucks, man. It's a grammatical stew. It's a grammatical jambalaya of just random loan words and weird or Latin origins, and I don't know. It makes zero sense. So, all right, let's go back here. Try to log out again. And somebody comes along and renames the table in another language anyway. Yeah, I'm looking at you, SAP. SAP is all in German, which is fun. All right, I might have to actually, I'm going to log back in again here. Log in. Test one. Test one. Okay, we're logged in. And we can see, edit and delete buttons there. Now I'm going to try to log out. Okay, I have logged out. That was successful. It doesn't look like it, but we haven't put on our little controls to hide the edit and delete buttons. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna modify just the display to not show these when the user is not logged in. So we only have a couple more small things to do. We're just gonna quickly slam through those. I do have to wrap things up here to go feed my kittens. Mattel says, "Hey, don't do it disparaging my love for jambalaya." But I do want to slam through these last couple things because I know if we take a break now, I'm going to lose the rest of my viewers, and I don't want to do that. I want to finish this out with you guys. So let's rock and roll. I think we're working. I think we're cooking. I think we're cooking with gas. If we're not, if these changes to the view don't work, then we will take a break. I'll go feed my kittens, and then we'll come back and I'll do troubleshooting with the 5 people that are left on the stream when I come back. It's okay. All right. So it looks like our paths are working. Our routes are working now. Thank you to everybody who spotted the little issues that we encountered. So let's modify our views. We want to modify the home view to only show these edit and delete buttons when the user that matches that cat is logged in. So if I'm not logged in, I shouldn't see any edit or delete buttons. If I am logged in, I should only see the edit and delete buttons that are associated with my logged in account. So we're going to go into our home view. And I'm going to do a couple things here. I'm going to add below my last field here, I'm just going to add another p tag. We can put it in the same one, but I kind of want to keep them separated just to show that this is data is coming in from a different place. We can just say posted by, and this is going to be the username of the person that posted it. I'm going to copy the syntax from here, and I'm going to say cat dot owner dot underscore ID. And now where this is coming from is our cat model, and it's going into this owner object, and it is getting the ID. It's getting the ID from the user schema. So the person that posted, it's actually getting that, and it's grabbing it. So it's going into that schema and it's grabbing their username, which I think is pretty cool. So we're doing it's going in here. It's going into the user schema. It's getting their the matching object ID, and it's extracting that username. I think that's pretty cool how it can do that. Cat.owner.id. Oh, and sorry, that's we actually don't want to post the ID. We want to post their username. My apologies. Cat.owner.username. There we go. That's what we wanted. Okay. Now let me just see if that'll work. Yeah. There we go. Posted by test1. So it's extracting that from the user schema in a completely different collection in the database, which is pretty friggin' wild. It's amazing how it can do that. It's so smart. Now, here's our card footer where we are displaying the edit and the delete buttons. So if I want, I only want those edit and delete buttons. So I only want that footer to show if I am the one who submitted the cat. So we can just say, here's the power of EJS. We can say if the current user if the current user and the cat.owner._ID equals, so kind of like we checked on the back end, we did the same check on the back end, right? Current user dot underscore ID. So we did that same check before we do any operation against the database, and now we're doing the same check on the front end. So it's doubling up, but again, more validation is good validation. So if that is equal, then display the card footer. So we'll put that closing tag here down below the form, and this div. I may have an extra div here, but that's okay. So if that's true, then show that. I think I'm missing a div, but okay, I would expect that to show up, but at least the if is working. Now I think so for each, we're looping through, displaying all this stuff. And checking the current user, cat owner ID equals current user underscore ID. And if it matches, show it. If it doesn't, then don't. Aren't you logged in? Yes, I am. That's correct. Yes, because I refreshed. Well, potentially. We'll see. Let me do this. I'll try logging back in. It gets confusing when you're making all these rapid changes, because every time you make a change, it restarts the server, which logs you out. So. Oh, there we go. Yep. So that shows that works, right? And now if I log out, there we go, and it's gone. So it's only going to show. appropriate edit and delete buttons for things that match the current user. So that's perfect. That's working. Now let's make a change to the nav bar to show whether or not I'm logged in and to show the appropriate buttons at the appropriate time. So if I'm not logged in, I don't want the ability to upload anything, right? It shouldn't even be visible. It's not an option. No opzione. Also, if I am logged in, I don't want the login or register buttons to show, right? Because that just gets confusing. It's not going to work. You're already logged in. So if I'm already logged in, I should only be able to see home, upload, and log out as options. If I'm not logged in, I should only be able to see home, login, and register. So I'm going to go into my nav bar. Into my nav bar and just add a little bit of extra logic. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste this from the finished version, but we're going to talk through what's happening. I know that's kind of a cheat, but there's no use in me typing it all out. So what we're going to do here is we're leaving the logo always visible, but we're checking to see if there is a user value. So if you recall earlier, in back here when we built our server, we pass the current user info through all routes everywhere. And so if there is no user logged in, there's no info to pass. And so what it's doing here is it's just saying, is there user info associated with the message that I'm getting from the controller? Because we are passing it through. So if I go, passing along user info as rec.user, right? Passing that in as rec.user. And then inside my controller, all my controllers essentially, I'm passing cat data and user data if it exists. So it's entirely possible to have cat data, but no user data if I'm not logged in. So this would be empty. And so in my nav bar, I'm just saying, hey, if there is user data, then show logged in as username. If there's no user, always show the homepage link, right? There's no conditional here. Always show the homepage link. If there is no user data, show the login and register links. If there is user data, show the upload and logout links. So once again, if there's user data, show who's logged in. Always show the homepage, no matter what. If there's no user data, show login and register. If there is user data, show upload and logout. So I'm going to save that and I'm going to reload. Okay, now that looks the way I expected. I see login and register because I'm currently logged out. I go to login. I say test1. I log in, and now the nav bar has changed to show upload and log out as valid options, and I can see the name of who is logged in. All right, now I click log out, and the nav bar changes again. Buttons go away. Bob's your uncle. There we go. Now, last test I want to do is register a new user. Okay, and that looks correct. I'm logged in as test2. I still can't make any changes to this. I see that I can upload or log out. I'm going to upload. I used to have a cat that loved cheese. She would eat saltine crackers and cheese. Like those were her favorite foods. Fun fact. I'm going to say fun fact is loves saltines. And we'll choose this kitty. Do that. Submit. There we go. So I can see the edit and delete buttons for this particular user, but not for this one. Hooray! It's working. I know I kind of zoomed through that. Oh yeah, this kitten was probably the cutest kitten I've ever had. Like just an absolute model. of a kitten, like a cover girl model kitten. She was so cute. I loved her, foster kitten. Super friendly too. She got adopted in like within like an hour of being put up for adoption. Yeah. So okay, everything is working. I think I know I really blazed through that last part, um, but I hope it made at least conceptual sense. It's okay if you don't, fully understand exactly what happened there, but just know a lot of how we can do these conditional type things is because we're passing that user information via middleware. The user information is always present in every request because we're passing it via the server, passing the current user info to all routes. So it's always present. And then, so we're passing it through our routers and into our controllers, all of them. So all of our controllers have access to that rec.user data. And so they can pass it into the views. And then our views can check and see, oh, does the user that is currently logged in, does that user match the user that is attached to this cat? Are they allowed to make changes? Should I display who's currently logged in? It helps it make all those logical decisions. CX says our cats on CatBook are going to have relationship status, parents, partners. Hey, the MooBot is posting a link to the GitHub code, to the finished code right there. You are welcome to take this code. It is free use. You can take it and you can do whatever you want with it. You can flesh it out. You can deploy it. You can turn it into a real friggin' app for cats if you want. It's all good. Whatever you want to do with it is fine. Just please tag me on Twitter if you do something cool with it because I want to see it. Yeah. All right, we do have to wrap up here. I apologize for speeding through that last bit, but I hope this shows that authentication, is fairly easy to implement. We did encounter a few errors here and there, but overall, the troubleshooting was fairly easy. The error messages were descriptive, um, and it was mostly just typos on my part. If I'd been going slower, I probably wouldn't have made them. But yeah, it's authentication is easy with Passport, so please do consider implementing Passport. Don't ever code your own authentication. Uh, if you are building an app where you need authentication, don't do it yourself. Use Passport. That's what it's for. It can work with any authentication provider that you want: Google, Twitch, Twitter, whatever. Don't build your own. Just use Passport. The age is measured in years. I know these are pictures of kittens, so it doesn't really make sense. But the age is measured. I imagine the age being measured in years. You could add units of measurement if you wanted. Um, it would just be text in the EJS. You could just add years there. Uh, Easy to do. All right. Arati says, hello, will there be a VOD available for the stream? Yes, there will. It'll be available on Twitch for 60 days. And then after that, it'll move to my YouTube channel. I do have a backlog of a few YouTube videos that are on my YouTube channel, but I haven't made them public yet. I'll be publishing 3 or 4 videos here shortly. I forgot to do it last week. Just can't remember anything. Um, so I'll post on Twitter when I'm publishing a few new videos. This one will probably not be available for a couple more weeks, um, just because so folks can watch it on Twitch and then it'll move to YouTube before it expires. But yes, to answer your question, it's always going to be available, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube. It'll be in one of those two places. Exclamation point YouTube for my YouTube channel, um, where you can watch all of my past streams, and I'll be posting a few more here shortly. All of my past streams ad free. I do not monetize my YouTube channel. I wouldn't make anything from the ad revenue anyway, and it would just be annoying for my viewers. So, no ads on YouTube. If ads on Twitch annoy you, then check out YouTube. Yeah, good question. Because yeah, I know the ads on Twitch can be annoying. Unfortunately, I cannot turn them off. Um, I wish I could. I would if I could. I have them turned down. I have the ads on Twitch turned down as low as they can possibly go, but I can't turn them off because Twitch doesn't let me because Twitch likes money. So there you go. All right, I'm going to look up a raid target. Any last questions before we wrap up? Alrighty. Let's see who's on. Ooh, we got a lot of good choices of folks on today. Um, we got, oh, no worries, Arade. Glad you enjoyed it. I know it was kind of fast, like I say, but that's why the VODs are there. You can always go back through. You can check out the code on GitHub and study it yourself. You can try implementing your own passport strategies. You can take my code and make it better. There's definitely room for improvement there. Um, but yeah, so we've got a few choices of raids today. We've got our friend Purple Elf. We've got Juicebox Hero. Ooh, I think I want to do Juicebox Hero. They raided me last week, so I think I want to do them one better and raid them back. So Juicebox Hero is super fun. Please stick around for the raid. They are hilarious and they work for Twitch, so they're a super fun person. And they have a super fun mini game on their channel too that you can play, where it's like a trampoline. So I dig it. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and raid Juicebox Hero. See you, Mattel. Thanks for stopping by today. Raid is starting now. I'll see you all next week. It won't be quite as rushed next week, hopefully, but looking forward to next week. I don't know what we're going to be doing, but keep an eye on Twitter. That's where I post my stream topics and Threads now too, because I'm there for some reason. But yeah, Threads or Twitter, either one. Check me out. I'm Mayan Wolf there as well. All right, raid is starting now. All right, rock and roll. See you all next week. Here we go.